sharing some of the startup successes we've seen in the last 12 months, and moreover to understand how we better leverage your networks and how we advocate for the growing businesses in our city. So to adapt to the ever-growing number that we're seeing coming through, we have 4 core pillars of support that we offer. The first are free 15-minute check-ins. So these are one-on-ones with unique businesses to understand what they need. How do we keep them going sustainably? This is open to anyone in the public and the community, and we connect them to resources, tools, funding opportunities. A great example that's come through is a company called Skillsy. Their goal was to improve the way we do gig work in Dunedin. So gig work are things like your one-off jobs, think hedge trimmers or a photographer. So we worked with Laura and Ben to build a plan around how they validated that market. What does it mean when we engage with someone? When you move to a new city, you tend to ask friends and colleagues for recommendations. They went on to validate this market by building Facebook communities of 15,000 people. They spent a year manually matching jobs to understand if there was a lucrative business there. And to date, they've matched over 3,000 jobs. And if they'd been charging what they're going to market with, that would have been $2 million of transactions. So after a year of running and testing, they're now in incubation with us building their app because they know that it has legs and they know that it has merit. So it's a great example of working with Startup Dunedin if you're not sure where to start, how we provided them with a community and hopefully saved them some time and money. The second way we offer support is through our tertiary sector. So I'm sure you're all familiar with a program called Audacious. This is the only program that's limited. It's just for students. And we get to work with both Otago Polytechnic and Otago University students. This program is about encouraging students to use their degree in their areas of interest, how they see the world and solving problems in their own communities. So Luni was started by a fashion student at Otago Polytechnic. Katie left her professional career in Australia to retrain. She was tossing up between business and fashion. She knew that she had Startup Dunedin support, so she decided to build her own technical training. She's built a rental maternity wear company. So her passion is the fast fashion that comes with maternity wear and how we can solve that. This year, she is working out of Startup Dunedin. She's received waste minimisation funding from the DCC, and she's just presented at the first ever National Female Accelerator Conference, representing Dunedin. Our third core pillar is the Distiller Incubator. So this is open to anyone in Dunedin. This is the high growth, high scale, thinking globally companies. This is the goal for us is it's the next Education Perfect or the next Pocket Smith. The program is about getting them to product launch or looking to raise or a similar kind of lofty goal. These are the companies that we want to go on to hire our best student, attract funding to the region, and our alumni are doing these amazingly competitive things. So Saha is a digital health solution that uses AI to predict and inform mental health. Not only have they raised millions, they've won places in 3 internationally competitive startup programs, and their team are currently based in Dunedin. A new team to join us is called Aftergame. Their team met while working together in 2 other very well-known New Zealand startups, Education Perfect and Partly. And even though they have mentors and they're friends with those founders, they saw value in the extra connections and resources Startup Dunedin could provide. Finally, our 4th pillar is collaborating with our community. This is about building capability and co-designing to make sure we're offering value to the city. We're very passionate that good ideas can come from anyone and anywhere. And so some of the highlights this year have included teaming up with the DCC team around waste minimisation, looking at how we promote commercial waste grants to startups and to innovation happening within companies. We've looked at hosting our Pacifica community for dinner and a funnel with a workshop with Hatch, which is a program kind of like Audacious, but embedded in both Pacifica values and with role models. We've worked with the Red Cross and the former refugee community to look at everything food starting up. This event was marketed in both Dari and Arabic, and it had amazing support with Good Food Dunedin, DCC team, Otago Farmers Market, and Abdul from Abdul's Gourmet Foods. And we've continued to build on our eyesight-inspired map. And this is the goal that one of these exists in all of our community centres and banks and accounting firms, anywhere that people might start first. So there's no wrong door. People can understand all of the support that exists for business wherever they go to first. We have an incredible pipeline coming through of both rangatahi, small, medium enterprises, growing ideas and scalable ideas. Startup Dunedin alumni are raising millions, they're hiring local talent, and they're becoming the next generation of advocates for our city. The best part is we're keeping them in the community. They're coming back, they're mentoring, they're advocating for our city. And so my ask today is you are probably one of the most well-networked rooms in Dunedin. We know the power of who you sit next to on a plane coming in or out of the town. And our ask is that you help us make those connections for the startups coming through, the people they need to meet with, the resources they're after, and generally spread the word. So you send people our way that are building, starting, or growing something. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy to take questions?
Yes.
Perfect. So order so far is Councillor Gary, Gilbert and Houlihan. So Councillor Gary.
Kia ora, thank you so much for the presentation, the report, and for your mahi. So much to be excited about. I'm really interested in hearing a bit more about the Red Cross employment pathway and the work with former refugees around food. Can you tell, because that was a new initiative and a very exciting one, and something we hadn't done before. Can you tell us a bit more about where that landed and the outcomes?
So when we were building this map, we met with a lot of different leaders in our communities to understand what are the barriers to accessing startups need. And it's intimidating to come into our offices. How can we work with other communities to take the things that we know, which is this map, and make it more accessible? And one of the things that came up with the local Red Cross team was A, the language barrier, but B, also immersion amongst the community, not just events that were closed off and hosted by them. And the biggest request coming through was for new food. We know food brings people together. It's how we celebrate cultures. And so we worked alongside them to work out what are those FAQs that come up all the time. And so the event was public to the wider community. It was ambitious in its multiple translations and kind of everyone in one room. But we've got some really exciting next steps. So we're creating a resource based on all of the conversation that happened at that event, which will be translated and sit with the Red Cross and also with Good Food Dunedin and the business clinics.
So just a follow-up question. Thank you. That's really exciting. And will that particular activity be part of what you do from time to time as we get more migrants to the city?
Absolutely, would be more than happy to. That's will be guided by Red Cross and their committee on that, but yeah, more than happy to.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. That was more or less my question, so thank you very much. No, that's right. As somebody who did attend that event, it was really quite remarkable, and the only thing that people really needed to learn was to pause to let somebody translate. That was, watching people come to terms with that was quite interesting. But you answered the point about future plans with that one, which is awesome. The other one I've got for you, which is, again, I found out when I visited your offices, is that map. I've been in business in Dunedin for, let's call it 20 years. It's just under. There are companies on that I've never heard of or have never thought of. If I was starting out now, that would be a massive help to me. So my questions are: you say it's in accountants' offices, etc. All of them? Was question number one? As in, are there any people? Are there any companies who were struggling to break through on? That's question number one. And question number two is: have you had any sort of feedback or success from it so far?
So the map was printed last year in its test form. This is its kind of new edition, so it isn't anywhere yet. So the answer is yes. Anyone who wants a map, please email me. You can have one. The funny thing about what you touch on is that's where it came from. So people think generally entrepreneurship is our 18-year-olds at the university. It's not. It's people with industry experience. They're starting up because they've seen a problem in their career, and likely they've been in business before and none of this existed. And so it means they sometimes find us too late, and they've spent money or they've done all this work without knowing how much support existed. And so that's where the idea literally came from, was how do we lift the capability of the whole city? They don't need to come to us. The goal is that this information is readily accessible. We printed 300 copies to test. I have no copies left. It's something that we send around nationally. Everyone's very jealous. It takes a lot of work, so they're welcome to copy it. But the goal is that it does change a lot. So it's sitting with Startup Dunedin means we're always looking for feedback for what's missing, but someone is accountable for updating it.
Okay, and so just a follow-up question, given we all undoubtedly have accountants and lawyers, and you're out of copies of that, if any of us are wanting to give them to our accountants and lawyers, roughly how long until you've got more copies in hand?
We can have them next week.
And it's online.
And it's also online, yes. So if you get stuck, it's always on our website as well.
Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Are you able to talk about changes to the funding of Callaghan Innovation and what funding they used to offer and what's changed and how that's impacted Startup Dunedin?
So about 18 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, there was a tender put out for the centralisation of startup funding. So historically, it went to a number of places around the regions, including Invercargill, Queenstown and Northland. But unfortunately, the pool of funding that was allocated for startups nationally wasn't increased at an MB level, so Callaghan didn't have any more money to give, and they had to centralise and look at how they could support more, which meant it went to 6 places that now offer national programs. We're fortunate enough that we've had 2 of our startups take place in those already, which is really exciting for the city. But it does mean that, 18 months ago, there was a pool of funding pulled from the regions.
How much was that funding?
60,000.
And what impact has that had at a local level for us?
It really affects, I guess, our opportunities. That funding went to supporting startups for things like travel and for mentors, and so some of those things have definitely had to be cut back.
Is there anything that our council could do while you're here today? Is there anything you can think of, because Callaghan Innovation are coming to Dunedin tomorrow, is there any communication or lobbying that you'd like us to do as a council at that end?
It's a great question. It was a national tender. Dunedin was one of the finalists out of about 50. At this stage, I don't think so. Those service level agreements have been signed for 5 years. And so until we sort of see what happens in future elections and funding rounds, there's probably no lobbying, I would say, at this stage, other than just tell them what a great job we're doing.
Deputy Mayor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just following up on a question I asked earlier about the Forward Work Programme, and I've just been back through all of the Forward Work Programmes to see when the Startup Dunedin Trust has been presenting annual reports, etc. And I see when we go back to the May Forward Work Programme that we're expecting an annual report in August 2023, and I'm just wondering, somehow we seem to have got out of alignment. Is your financial year different to Council's financial year?
The quarterly report, well, the half-yearly report, was just based on feedback for more stories, and so that's why we've presented that information that way this time.
So when would Council be expecting an annual report?
I'd imagine before the end of the year.
And I just want to check that is it possible to align the report with the service level agreement? Because I see that given the funding, that there's a service level agreement in there as well. I mean, great to have all this information there, but I'm a real process person. So I'm like, the last annual report came through in May 2022. So it's just that lining up of that timing, and I can understand that timings kind of slip and stuff, but nice to get them in lined up. Not a question, sorry.
Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is actually around the waste minimisation work you're doing. How are the decisions aligned with Waste Futures?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's very powerful. You can just push that button. So our role in there is just collaborating with the team. So they set the agenda. They're the ones promoting the funding. For us, it's about using our avenues and our different communication channels to try and reach different people that it might not be on the radar for, because I think sometimes the humble nature of people in Dunedin means they don't go out for these opportunities, and so reminding people that they're probably doing some really important work and there is funding available. We're just trying to pull together a different part of the community to remind them that funding's there.
Mr. Liggett, then how, once it's issued, how are those investments recorded relative to, again, the Waste Environmental team's long-term ambition?
In terms of the Waste Futures one, we don't actually administer that. There's been a direct relationship with Chris's team and also back into Startup Dunedin. Is that the question, Councillor O'Malley?
Yeah, then I guess my question would be, will they eventually get to the Infrastructure Committee in terms of how those investments are making the relationship to the strategic directives for the city?
I'd imagine so, but I'll confirm that with Mr Henderson.
Councillor Fiso.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chair. Tēnā kōrua. I think my question is for Mr Reedy. Given that, and I'm speaking from experience of being on other bodies of governance, in terms of your strategic direction, in terms of actually having tangata whenua or mana whenua employees or leaders in that space, and on your board, what's your progress in terms of that?
Thank you, Councillor. I guess it's something that we keep on our agenda all the time, and we're working towards it in our broader strategic plan. We've had a couple of changes on the board, mainly waiting to see how Te Pukenga sort of, I don't know, shakes out, which is probably going to be a long process. And also we've just changed our member from the university as well as David Thompson. So now, who's also in GDP, so I think that's been a bit of a win for Startup Dunedin. I think it's elevated us within the university in terms of working more broadly rather than just the business school. From a tangata whenua and mana whenua point of view, we don't currently have any representatives on our board, but it is something, I guess, that's always on our mind, and we have reached out to Ngāi Tahu a couple of times, haven't we, Rachel? But they haven't had anyone available, anyone with any particular interest in that at the moment. We do recently have Amy Tawa joined our board, and she's bringing a more Pacific focus to us, which is good. And we've been actively trying to engage with those groups and had community outreach events in the last 12 months. And yeah, I think it's something that is important to us strategically, but we want to do it right and do it meaningfully, I guess, is the... Yep.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I'm just interested in your funding model. I guess I think you said that you can come in and get your first 15 minutes for free. So then down the track, then people pay for your service?
No, so it's a force of habit because people always ask what's paid. Everything we do for the most part is free, occasionally events, but we believe there's enough barriers to accessing to support to start up, so everything we do has no cost.
That's great. That was really where I was heading, was in terms of the barriers for start up. So then you're funded through the DCC, the university and the Polytech primarily is how you manage to fund your operations. Thank you.
Just before I jump to Councillor Vandervis, Ms Butler, can you expand upon the funding from Te Pukenga and their current structure and where that may be heading?
So we're lucky that we have Stephen Turnbull on our board, who is across the changes happening there, but unfortunately they're still in change. So we're working closely with them to understand what their community outreach will be, but at this stage we don't have any clarity.
What level of confidence do you have that the funding would remain?
I don't know if anyone has a good answer to that question at this stage.
So it could be in doubt?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vandervis.
Not sure, I haven't read the report closely enough. I'm just wondering, this is a half-year report. What's the half-year cost of running Startup Dunedin Trust?
So we run with the funding from DCC, OU and OP, it is just spread across the June to June year. So our biggest costs are things like salaries and events, but...
And how much is it?
I don't have those numbers on me, but I'd be happy to get them for you.
If you could email them, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? No, perfect, thank you. You can leave. Somebody like to move? Councillor Houlihan, seconded Councillor Gary. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. So, yeah, I'm very happy to support this. Startup Dunedin do brilliant work in our city, and it's a very valid point that Ms Butler has raised today, is that an area that often doesn't get talked about is that it's often people who are of an older age who have been in industry, working in it, and then discovered that there's some things that they can problem solve and do as startup, as a startup. And so while we've got Audacious and we have connections with the university and Polytech or Te Punga, there is a huge opportunity, and I think we can do a lot more with it for people who have been in the or are currently in work environments and are looking for opportunities to do startups. And it's a huge growth area that obviously that Startup Dunedin taps into and supports, but I also see it as a way forward for our city to solve a lot of our problems and to see us being more innovative, which is fantastic. But something I raised earlier around funding losses from Callaghan Innovation has hit that small startup sector, and I think anything we can do to help to lobby to bring back some of that funding to our city would be really good. I would love to see Callaghan Innovation have an office here and a base here in our city, and to be more involved in our city and bring back that funding, because 60,000, while it doesn't sound like a lot, it is a lot to our small startup sector. So, thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first up, I want to congratulate not only the startup team, the board, and Rachel and her team, but also Chanel and Fraser around the work that's done to support this. In these times, which are fiscally challenging and there's doom and gloom in some parts of our community, I see this as a bright light and a beacon of hope around what is possible. And I find it exciting. It fits very well with our education sector, which we're known for. We've always been a city of firsts, and I find the projects that come out of this very exciting, incredibly innovative. I looked up Skillsy last night, and it's such a pragmatic idea, but a wonderful concept that somebody's picked up on. And I particularly loved and would encourage you to think about other possibilities. I particularly loved the initiative with the Red Cross employment pathways, because some of our former refugees and migrants find it difficult to get employment. They often have great ideas, and food is a wonderful focus, as you said, Rachel. And it sounds like that was a really moving occasion. So I encourage you to continue those initiatives to all sorts of corners of our community, because I think in that we'll have success. And certainly thank you for the request to use our networks to strengthen what you're doing, and that's a call on all of us. So a great bit of work and very satisfying. Thank you very much.
Mayor Raddick.
Yes, I'd just like to congratulate you on this, the team, on the whole startup ecosystem and programs that you have. I think it's very important that the ground is constantly seeded. You never know how many of those seeds are going to grow and how high they will grow, but if we keep spreading those seeds on the ground, there'll be parts of that ground that are particularly fertile, and from that ground will grow mighty trees, and some of them might only be shrubs and bushes, but it'll make a much more interesting ecosystem for the town. And I think all manner of business growth should be encouraged. Thank you very much for the work you do.
I also want to thank Rachel and the team Jamie and the board of Startup Dunedin for all the work they do. Their events are actually great to attend, so anytime councillors you see that invite come through your inbox, please put it in your diaries, because they are a good evening and a great way to see what's happening around town and get the vibe. I do want to touch on the fact that when we think of the changes going on at Otago Polytechnic and the challenges that are taking place, to me it is very vital that they stay in the game on this, because it's hugely beneficial for their students and their community. And it just shows me sometimes how government's policies can actually get lost in the importance of what gets done around the community and the impact it can have. The university is a great supporter of Startup Dunedin, and I think the three-way partnership with the DCC is important, and I think that's what we have to maintain, that the three partners really stay together, connected, for a very strong startup program. And having watched the Startup Dunedin over the last 10 years, it has gone from strength to strength, and you do see some many businesses come through and individuals come through. You see them sometimes succeed, you see them sometimes fail, but what they learn and how they grow from it is very much the same analogy as Councillor Radic was saying, Mayor Radic was saying, the fact that you never know whether it's going to be a shrub or a mighty totara. There is the ability for anything to come out of Startup Dunedin, and that's why we have to maintain our support and funding to them as we go forward. But thank you for that report, Rachel and the team, and I look forward to seeing the follow-up year end later on in the year. Back to Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. I think that covers it all for now. Thank you.
So the motion is that the committee notes the Startup Dunedin Trust report to the 30th of June 2023. All in favour? Against? Passed. Thank you. Item 8, job done. Dunedin Business Internship Program 2022-23. Mr. Liggett and Miss O'Brien. Yep, Councillor Gary. All yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're happy to take the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. I wonder if you could just speak to how you promote the program. And I asked this because I went online last night and was looking up, and I forgot there was a separate website, but it wasn't easy to find it within the DCC website, which was where I was expecting. So it just really prompted the question of how you communicate with students, and how broadly, beyond, for example, the business school or the areas that they might be expecting it. There might be some of the areas like the creative sector that perhaps aren't as tuned into these internships. And what's the pickup like? I have seen the figures, but what's the current pickup like with businesses? Because I did see there were some areas that had no businesses in there when I checked the Job Done site.
I think something to be aware of is that the real sort of drive and focus of Job Done is actually business need. So we put a lot of emphasis on actually, the business community and what it is that they need, and that's kind of the key point about the program. So our role is as a facilitator or as a broker, essentially. And so we put quite a lot of focus on maintaining the businesses that are currently in the program and reaching out to businesses that are new and perhaps haven't been in the program before. And we do that through our database. We have a social media campaign that we push through Enterprise Dunedin channels and DCC channels as well through social media. And just in general, connecting up with businesses in the rounds. That's kind of the key driver, really. And our Job Done website is really the landing pad for businesses to come in and understand a little bit more about the program. Secondary to that is the reaching out into the student catchment through the university and the polytechnic, and we have a sort of a separate activity around that, which is really connected to the careers advisory teams that are both in those areas. So we have a separate set of comms and social media outreaches to those, and we do that slightly later on in the piece because there's no point in reaching out to students if the businesses aren't in fact providing the internship opportunities. So it's a sort of a balancing act in terms of timing.
So thank you for that. That's a helpful differentiation. Can you just tell me currently for this year, what's the uptake like business-wise, and what's your sense around, is it usually oversubscribed by students?
Well, my focus is really on the businesses, because without the businesses there's no point in having the students actually engaging in the program. Currently, because we're now into the 2023-24 season, we have about 8 businesses in the program, which is about right for this time of the year. I would expect businesses to be reflecting on what they need, because we need them to actually really understand what it is that they need. And then once they do that, they make an application and it goes on the website, and then we reach out to the student community in a sort of a soft launch kind of way. And once we have a critical mass of opportunities from the business community, that's when we can sort of drive a little bit harder into the student community. But as I say, the focus really is what do the businesses actually need.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Barker.
So I have one question about what the interns are paid, and I see that the council puts a sum towards. Is there anything about living wage requirements within the contract between the business and the student?
If you look at the website, we have a set of guidelines and expectations for businesses, and that covers things like our expectation that businesses should be paying students. It's actually up to the business, but they should pay them above the minimum wage. And they tend to do that, actually, as a rule. Above minimum wage tends to be where our Dunedin community is actually paying students.
Okay, that's all the questions done. So I'm happy to move that the committee notes the results of the 2022-23 Job Done Business Internship Program. Seconder, Councillor Mayhem. Thank you. Just speaking to this, I just want to thank Ms O'Brien for the work she does each year to make this program a success. But I think more importantly, I want to thank the businesses that have come on board and hosted the interns, because without the businesses coming through, it sort of becomes a chicken and egg situation where if you don't have the opportunities, it's hard for the interns to find the roles. I also want to acknowledge that out of the 44 interns, 27 were employed post-internship, and I think that was a great success rate. And you can just imagine how many more picked up skills that have taken them on to other opportunities. 80 new positions were created by the host businesses. It shows that there are some dynamic people coming through these programs, and that they're really helpful for all involved. So, Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And look, I found that explanation around the focus extremely helpful. But my lens was really wearing other hats and thinking about our desire as a city to keep our students here in Dunedin once they've graduated. And this is a perfect example of the kinds of things we can do as a council to encourage that, to support the businesses, but to encourage our skilled young people that have studied here to stay. And sometimes that involves international students, which is wearing another hat entirely. And I met a young man recently who came here to study, followed his sister here, was an international student, had got educated in Auckland, came here to study, and has now got his first, might I say, real job, his first serious job in the city. And this is where he's making his home, and that story will be repeated many times. So thank you for the work you do to realise that strategic goal of ours to keep our talented young people, our talent and our skills here in Ōtepoti, Dunedin.
Any other speakers? No? Okay, I'll put a motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare the motion carried. Item 9, Strategic Tourism Asset Protection Programme Investment Plan 2023, final report. Mr Christie.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd just like to note Ms van der Villiers' apology from today's meeting. She's on annual leave. I'll do my best to answer questions in her absence. Happy to take them now.
Questions? Deputy Mayor Barker.
Just have a question about the number of STAP projects. When I look back at the start when the projects began, and the report that came 9th of February 21, there were 15 projects. And then it moved a year later to 23 projects in February 22, and I think I can count 16 projects in here, but you've sent me the stat report to MB and the project numbers look a bit different. So were there decisions made throughout the process to concentrate more on some projects than on others?
That's certainly correct, Deputy Mayor, but also throughout the implementation of STAP, that was quite a dynamic and changing environment. So we had ongoing discussions with MB about reallocating some of those funds within the broad groupings to ensure that those funds were matching projects and expectations for our community. So we had a number of variations on the way through, which is probably where it is difficult to align right back to the original contract, but happy to work you through any of those details.
So I see in the report coming up next on the marketing that was quite a bit of money spent on FIFA marketing and then quite a bit of money on Moana Nui marketing. Did some of that come out? It's probably look like having a chat. Did some of that come out of the STAP money? Because I see there was something in there about event promotion. Oh gosh, where was it? New signature event promotion, $50,000 in there. So would that be where the Moana Nui promotion money came from, or the FIFA money?
No, my understanding is that money did not come from STAP. The new event money was for another project from an external party that we supported, but I can confirm what that particular project was, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, and can I just check the Regional Events Fund was separate to that? And is there a report on that coming up?
Yes, the Regional Event Fund rounds have closed and the money's been fully allocated. We do have through to 30th of June 2024 for those funds to be spent, at which time we'll do a closeout report for committee.
Councillor Van der Vis, then Councillor Lucas, then Councillor Gary.
1.7 million from MB seems a fairly sizable chunk of cash. Do MB have a follow-up once all this money's been spent to assess the value of what's been done with it? And is a lot of it just spent on consultants?
So MB will have an audit process and an evaluation process, which I would need to get further details on in terms of how they anticipate undertaking that. We've had a completed report go to MB, which has been approved by them. In terms of whether they get value for money, I think that'll be something that they will look into. And second part of your question was around the consultant spend. There was a lot of money went to consultants, and also a lot of money went directly to tourism businesses through other funding rounds that MB put into the sector to help post-COVID get a rebalancing back into tourism, given that that sector was really hard hit through the COVID period. So there were a lot of different programs that MB, I know, have been evaluating as part of their process.
Of the 1.7 million, have you got even a rough idea of how much went to consultants?
I haven't got that figure on hand, sorry, Councillor.
You could get it to us, though.
Yes, I certainly could.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I'm interested in the food and drink tourism sector plan. I was involved with my farmers market hat on in some of those workshops, which seemed to be more than a year ago, and there was a lot of enthusiasm in the sector to work together and to progress on that. And it seems to have gone quiet for, as I said, for at least 12 months, and I'm just concerned that that little bit of momentum that was there and the willingness to work together potentially has been lost, and I'm just wondering what's the plan to progress that?
Yeah, so the work that was done and the report presented by Sarah Meikle has been made public, and I guess workloads have just caught up with staff around how we take that forward. It has been highlighted in terms of the destination plan as an important piece of work, so we will look at how that can be resourced to ensure that we don't lose that momentum any further.
Councillor Gary.
Yeah, I was interested in the page 58, paragraph 25, Mr. Christie, the crisis resilience. And I know that was driven by COVID, but I was interested to know what state would you sense that those crisis resilience plans are in, given that will not be the last crisis that that is faced potentially by the tourism industry and others?
Yeah, look, I think this was one of those programs that we put in place to try to assist tourism businesses to understand what a crisis meant for their business and their future. My understanding is it wasn't a huge uptake in response to that, which is always a little bit disappointing. You know, really that is an individual business decision in terms of how much they want to focus on their resilience and what plans they want to have in place. So we continue to offer those types of workshops to the sector to build that capability, and that is something we'll continue to do even post this funding.
Oh, that's great to hear, because it might be a timing issue and a capacity issue. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the report. Just curious, Mr. Christie, what was the attendance like at the sustainability workshops?
I think the recent ones were well attended, Councillor. My understanding is that the sector certainly is engaging on that topic, and again we would expect to continue to build capability into that sector with the result of these workshops that have been run and looking to build off those in partnership with the likes of Business South and others that have got expertise in that area.
Thank you. Is it possible to get those numbers, and also is there any plans to continue those into the future?
Yes, I can get you the numbers, and as I say, I think we will continue to work with the tourism operators around this particular topic.
Mayor Raddick.
Part of the funding has been spent on research of various aspects of the tourism industry, of all sorts of things has been researched. How are those reports and results of that research and consultants' reports disseminated to the tourism industry or the stakeholders who have the most interest in?
We have made those reports available, Mr. Mayor, but I think we need to, as we've now adopted the destination plan, we will be attaching all of those pieces of research and work to that document and proactively trying to work with those groups that can benefit from the research that's been undertaking. So some would be what we'd call baseline research that would look at, say, market perceptions of tourism. Over time we will measure that again to see how that has shifted with the various campaigns we run and other bits of work that we do with the community around that sector. So some will be baseline research, others will be research that's useful for things like product development and people that are looking at new tourism opportunities, and that research is always made readily available.
Will that research be disseminated to us?
Most certainly, yes.
Councillor Lafiso.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. Tēnā koe, Mr. Christie, and I acknowledge Ms. de Villiers' absence, but I'm just looking at the marketing cultural audit, point 16. So the training program that will be continue to be delivered by Okaha, is that like, do tourism operators pay for that training, or is it part of our service delivery, or what?
I'd need to check the actual detail of that. I know that the work has been done to enable the workshops to take place. I'm just not sure whether it'll be a fee for service or whether we can in fact run those free of charge.
Mr. Christie, a question from myself, from the chair. All the STAP funding came through, and there was some good, lots of good information initiatives came out of it. Do you envisage any other government funding coming through one source or another for us to continue some of this work, especially around regional tourism and some of the other growth opportunities?
Yes, but in very different ways, Mr. Chairman. I understand that MB have currently got an RFP out looking at ways that they can continue to support destination plans, but it won't be driven through regional tourism organisations like ourselves. It will be a coordinated effort through national bodies. So there will be some funding, but it won't be anywhere near the extent that we've seen through the STAP funding round.
Councillor Gary?
I was interested in item 15, the project to produce signage and storytelling along the Harbour Shed path. And while I understand that the project's not entirely finished right through around the circuit, when would we expect that to be rolled out? Because that's been underway for some time and the Shed path's now been named. So do we have any idea of when that's likely to be rolled out?
No, but I know that it is imminent in terms of those signs that have been paid for through this STAP funding to be implemented. So I'd have to check with Transport because they're actually leading it.
Oh, sorry. Imminent's fine. Thank you.
So the motion, or the resolution in front of us, is that the committee notes the enterprise Dunedin. No, that's the next one. The resolution is that the committee notes the Strategic Tourism Assets Protection Program Investment Plan 2023 final report. Anybody like to move? Then okay. Councillor, I'll move and Councillor Barker will second. I don't have anything else to add, but thank you for the report. Councillor Barker.
I think we should thank the government for $1.7 million injected into our RTO. It's a very difficult process, I guess. Government was kind of scrambling to support a tourism industry which had been completely devastated by the hit of COVID, and they put some, I think it was about $500,000 each into some iconic attractions in the city, which managed to help them stave off bankruptcy, actually, to tell the truth, because I know a few of those businesses, and I think putting the money into the RTO was a good way forward to look at our destination plan, especially when things had changed and when sustainability and carbon zero had become so much of a focus, as well as iwi Māori. We've got a new destination management plan. It's just a pity that the Mayor has left, because we have had quite an amount of research done that's very useful, and I think that we have been provided with that research, but it will part of the destination management plan work will be to actually put it online so it's immediately accessible to everyone. And the community sentiment survey itself was really, really useful to us as council, and I recommend we all actually look at it as part of our long-term plan. And also it was useful to us when we were doing the heritage plan work, because we actually saw about how the community felt about heritage. So all of that work that was done and funded by government actually has a whole lot of feeding through to a whole lot of other work that we're doing, so we can be grateful that it happened during a time of extreme pain for one of our top earning industries.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to acknowledge the breadth and depth of the work that was able to be done with this funding injection, and I want to pick out a couple of items from that. One is the digital assets and new image and video assets. The refreshed image and video in Dunedin's image library is hugely useful, and I see this through my Study Dunedin hat, that for our education sector, both tertiary and secondary, that imagery is used in terms of promoting the city in the first instance and then promoting their institutions. So that is a very valuable asset and resource. The second one I want to highlight is the report that was commissioned around understanding the trends in Dunedin's arts and culture sector, which wasn't necessarily always well understood, but it put some figures around it and it busted some myths, and it was a particularly useful report. And the community sentiment one, it was a very important piece of work because there were questions following COVID around social licence and tourism, and it was interesting to see where the community sat around that and where the pressures were and where the benefits lay and the negative impacts. So many pieces of work there which delve into all aspects of our work as a council, but just got us a bit of a head start following COVID, and to do a bit of more in-depth work that we may not otherwise have been able to achieve.
Further speakers? No? Then I'll move, put the resolution. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Passed. Item 10, Enterprise Dunedin Marketing and Publicity Activity Report, July 2022 to June 2023. Ms Mash. All yours, so you can speak to it.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'll just take the report as read, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to address.
Questions? Deputy Mayor Barker.
Sorry, I'm just trying to work through what so with the marketing and publicity activity, the industry has been calling for a strategic marketing plan and an overall events plan as well, and that has also come through in the destination plan. So is there an overall marketing strategy for the city, one, and two, can operators buy into that plan?
So it's on my program of work for this quarter to create an Enterprise Dunedin marketing plan that is a public-facing document, particularly for stakeholder groups. And so stakeholder groups should be able to take that document, identify what we're doing, and then make their approach to partner with us, or vice versa. We'll make an approach to partner with them.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I see in some of the campaigns you've been able to, I guess, quantify whether that's been clicks or engagement, whatever. And I know it's a really hard thing to measure is from what campaign whether it's effective or not. So that for those campaigns that there's no, I guess, numbers, those are the ones that we don't know. I mean, I'll use the example of promoting to, I think, people in Queenstown about, coming to Dunedin afterwards. And my question is that a bit late? I mean, if people are already in Queenstown, generally they've already made their plans, and then to have a campaign. I mean, I'm just using that as an example. So, I mean, how do we measure the success of our campaigns?
You're quite right, and that particular example of a campaign, while well-intentioned and probably a good gap filler, isn't something I would seek to repeat. So the reality is, as we move into planning new campaigns, is we need to have measurable outcomes from them. And you'll note this is an activity report, which just talks to activity without actual outcomes attached to it, which is not ideal. And so going forward, the easiest way to track it is through online engagement. And so a bit like when we use QR codes to specify where someone comes from, then that will give us the intel we need to decide whether that campaign had the effect. So just speaking to what we have measured, impressions is just that notion that it's come across somebody's screen. And I wouldn't call that, we don't call that engagement. What we're looking for is a share or a like or a comment on something to understand that we may have had a net effect on making someone pause and actually read the material and engage with it.
Any further questions? No? Do I have anybody that wants to move? Councillor Gary? And seconder? Councillor Walker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wrote after reading this outstanding. I particularly love the bylines, swap your boots for booties, and the one about the tropical forest stargazing with a heater if that's not warm enough. It's the tropical forest next door. I don't know who comes up with these, but they really resonate with me. I was struck by the variety of campaigns, the different markets that they speak to, but there was one in particular on page 68 which resonated with me, and it resonated because I had seen this potential working at a number of iconic tourist attractions in Dunedin as a guide over a number of years, and it was a student and parent campaign which was a modest sum to undertake, but has huge potential because we know that many of parents of students come to settle their loved ones in at the start of the first year, and then they come back to visit, and so it was great to see that underway and happening, and there is so much activity here. I look forward to the plan that Ms Mash talked about, but thank you, great work.
Deputy Mayor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. It was good to be able to ask Ms Mash the questions about the strategic marketing plan and the operator buy-in, because there has been a bit of a mismatch over a number of years about setting those marketing plans, and it has come in from the Dunedin destination plan that we work together on what our core values, selling points, agreed positioning are as part of the destination plan, which I imagine will feed into the next iteration of the marketing plan, because it's great to have lots of activity, but it also needs to be targeted and it also needs to be measured, because I am a very experienced marketer, so I know that you don't just throw money at stuff and hope. And we are competing against, I can't remember if there's 31 or 30 regional tourism organisations in New Zealand, but it's a really competitive marketplace. So in order to achieve cut-through and return on investment for our marketing money, we do need to pay careful attention to this. Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If you go to page 65, there's a wee boy there with a big smile on his face, and this is one of the reports. When I read it, I sat there with a smile like that on my face. It's a fantastic activity report, and it made me very proud to be a Dunedinite, actually. And I don't know who's responsible for all the imagery and copy, but it's stellar, it's top drawer. And I'll just give you one wee example. I was recently abroad, as you all know. I was watching a Women's World Cup game while sitting in Frankfurt in Germany, and half-time came along, and on the adverts, up popped an advert from Dunedin, and I leapt up shouting, "I'm from there." And as people watched through at the end of it, pretty much everyone in the room from all over the world said, "Boy, that looks fantastic." So I felt very, very proud that we were featured there. The imagery piqued people's interest, and they were bloody proud, and so was I. Thanks for this report, which is gone.
Mayor Raddick.
Yes, there's lots of wonderful content here, and there's lots of ads going out. It's wonderful to hear that measurement will be enhanced and focused on those actual click-throughs. But even within this report, there are a great many impressions, there are a great many measurement of clicks, and there are millions of eyeballs that have come across Dunedin in the course of the ads that we are seeing in front of us right now. But there are hundreds of thousands of click-throughs, I think, adding up in total. So this really makes a significant difference to how many people come and visit our city. So I think that the team deserve a lot of congratulations for the effort that's gone in, and it'll be. We look forward to now that the world is a lot more open, and that more and more people will come. So thank you.
Before I send it back to Councillor Gary for a writer reply, I also want to acknowledge the depth of this report. I always know it sort of has cut through when I get a phone call from my mother to tell me from Australia that she has been watching Dunedin on TV and how wonderful it looked, and even that we had a good day, which I try to tell her is most days. But the key thing being is that then her and her friends end up discussing Dunedin, and it goes on. But the one thing that I find is actually when I share the posts of the different articles, and we all saw the BBC article recently talking about how wonderful Dunedin was. You know, the amount of click-throughs that got and responses I got from people around the country, but also internationally through my friend group, again highlights actually what great assets we have and how great the city really is as a tourism destination. And I have had instances where friends have said and made detours to come and see us in Dunedin, even though we weren't on their original itinerary, because it is a visually stunning place. And I would say that the tongue-in-cheek and the storytelling, and whether it's the ads or along with the articles, really actually presents the city strongly, shows the fun side of it, and actually hits all demographics, in my opinion. And I think that's important. You know, the elderly to the young kids can all have a great time in Dunedin, and that's something we should champion a lot more. Councillor Gary, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been touched on the slightly dry humour and the way that we communicate our key features is rather special and bespoke to Dunedin, I feel. It's been called top drawer, and we've heard about the cut through from both Councillor Walker and Councillor Wiley. And we often focus on the online aspect, which obviously is important in this day and age, but that word of mouth that you have referred to certainly is relevant. What is often forgotten is the outward-looking nature of marketing campaigns, and just wearing my marketing background hat for just a moment. Of course, we need a marketing plan. We've been told that that is coming. And of course, we need collaboration with our tourist operators, and it's great that they want to contribute. We're on that journey that will come, but in the meantime, we certainly have some amazing marketing going on through these articles, images that really capture people's attention and imagination, and goes into all corners of the world from this list. Thank you.
I jumped the gun a little bit. So the resolution for everybody that they've spoken to is that the committee notes the Enterprise Dunedin Marketing and Publicity Activity Report, July 2022 to June 2023. So it was moved by Councillor Gary, seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Passed. So item 11, items for consideration by the Chair. Are there any? No. Then I declare the meeting closed at 2:10 p.m. We will take a 10-minute break to prepare for the Civic Affairs Committee. So, thank you.
Councillors, we will get cracking. Welcome along to the Civic Affairs Committee meeting of the 5th of September 2023. I declare the meeting open at 2:21. Starting off with there is no public forum. So we move on to apologies. We have one apology from Councillor Benson Pope. I'll move that that be accepted. Seconded, Councillor Walker. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. Does anybody have any alterations they would like to raise? If not, I will move that the committee confirms the agenda without addition or alteration. Seconded, Councillor Lufiso. All those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Declarations of interest. So members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arose between their role as an elected representative or any private or other external interest they may have. Are there any changes? If not, I will move that the committee notes the elected members' interest register as attached in attachment A. Seconded, Councillor Wiley. All those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Confirmation of minutes of the last Civic Affairs Committee meeting, which is on the 16th of May. That's moved by Councillor Lufiso, as I was absent. Seconded, Councillor Walker. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Part A reports. Community Board Forum. So we have two community boards presenting to us today, the first one being West Harbour Community Board, and I invite to the table please Ange McAlane to present on behalf of the West Harbour Community Board. So, welcome Ms McAlane, and you have 15 minutes and we welcome your presentation. Thank you.
You're on. I'm on. Oh gosh, that's loud. Okay, I have some notes, but probably won't really use them a lot because a couple of things I'm going to talk about today, and I'm really impressed that you pronounce my name really, properly, because no one ever does. So thank you. I
sought advice and practiced.
Did well. Yeah, I know, but the rest of it, not so much. Okay, well, I'm going to start with the shared path. As you know, the shared path is now open. It's not yet totally complete. They're still working on it. They don't think they'll be off the site possibly till January. Just things that have to be finished. As people are using it, so I guess people are sort of pointing out things that they've missed, or that's sort of like new things. You have to sort of have that honeymoon period. So it's amazing, and it's bringing a lot of people there. I saw a dog walking itself along the shared path this morning. I thought, where are you going? No, it was just trotting along. But the thing is, with the shared path, of course, now it's very unique. No one else has got one in Dunedin or anywhere else at this point, to the extent that we have, because it's got its wee challenges, little hills and the big wall at Roseneath, which is great. The boardwalk, which is something a wee bit different. Someone I know said that their daughter threw poo sticks over in the weekend off the boardwalk and ran across, looking out for cyclists at the time. But lots of people are using it. They're using it on foot, by wheel of various descriptions, bikes, skates, wheelchairs, mobility scooters. I've seen everything. And they're all toddling along, having a nice wee time looking at the scenery, which is very good. One of the things about this, though, is that especially people coming to port, it's an adventure because they haven't been able to do that before, and it's all very exciting and it's great for port. But one of the biggest problems we've currently got is that people just, leave their bike anywhere. And they're leaning them up against windows, sticking them down people's driveways, sort of up against lampposts, and they sort of fall over. So the thing is that bike racks are desperately needed. And I know council has, I've heard secondhand that council has actually ordered some. And I'm not sure when they're due to arrive, how many there are going to be, and when they will be installed. I'm very keen for them to be installed as soon as they arrive, but also hope that you can do that if you still don't have possession of the site, because the public are obviously the active users now, and we need to have them being a bit more, sort of concerned about the actual community and where they leave their bike. And also they don't want to get it stolen, they don't want to get it damaged, so we need to look at providing them with a good supply of bike racks. There are some that have turned up at the supermarket. There are a few in other places. There's some around at Kerry's Bay that have turned up in the same way as they did at the supermarket. But that is something that I would like council to confirm, because I've only heard it secondhand that there are bike racks coming, and how many I don't know. So if you could let us know, that would be really good if we could have that. The other thing about it, though, of course, is that cruise season hasn't started, but obviously tourists have. People are starting to come down in the weekends, not only just as cyclists, but having the cyclists added to the mix, it means that there's more pressure on the public toilets. And I'm probably going to bang on about that for the rest of the year, century. Because while Port Otago's new building, the staff are in there, they've got a viewing platform that the museum, which I'm part of, asked for as part of the deal that they could build around us. They've also put public toilets in the bottom there for people who are coming into the building to look at the view, and that will help to add a couple of toilets to the numbers that we have. But bikes on the footpath outside the public toilet, like currently on George Street, is quite dangerous for people walking by, and more parking would help that as well. And possibly would need some bike parks beside the toilet, and obviously the library. So that would be good to have more information about that. Let me just look. If you haven't actually been down to have a look at the shared path, I know some of you have, and Steve obviously uses it every day, but it's definitely worth even just parking your car at different places if you don't want to walk too far, and just doing that particular section, because you don't have to do the whole thing. You can just do it in sections and go for a walk, which is really, quite good to see people doing that as well, because there is actually parking alongside there now too. Okay, the influx of cyclists, well, we've talked about that. I counted actually last Wednesday, because I only work 3 days a week, and last Wednesday after yoga I was in the cafe, as we do, and I counted 39 bikes go past in different directions in that sort of hour that I was there. So it's definitely picking up, and that's only a midweek day. I'm sure that the weekends are going to be completely different to that and a lot busier. Okay, as you heard me say last time about the main street, that our main street looks a bit shabby, especially now with all these people coming to cycle and, wanting to have coffee and what have you, or go for a picnic or something. It doesn't look the most appealing place to come to. It's like a wee shabby village, really. And while people try really hard, Port Otago have given us planter boxes that they, put out. They've put them out again. They put up hanging flower baskets last season for cruise ships, which was really good. But it just sort of lacks that kind of, welcome feel. And it would be really good if you would consider bringing the upgrade of our main street forward in in the plans where it sits currently, because at the moment I'll be retired probably, been for quite some time before it actually gets upgraded. And okay, that's not that far away, but the thing is that to bring it forward would be really, really good, and I think it would also help the retailers. The retailers often feel that port is just the parking space for a ship. People get, use the bus, unfortunately. Should catch the shuttle bus from the port. Price has been a factor in the last season, so people often feel that we're just like the sort of middle part. They sort of come through, go, oh yeah, and then they get on a bus or they drive through. And the thing is that we would like to see some of our retailers actually benefiting from all these people that do come through, because they sometimes feel that, they don't really, people walk past, the doors are open, it looks inviting, but they're still not getting people in there because people feel, oh, we have to go to Dunedin, we have to go to town. And I guess the thing is that over the summer, you get like 200,000 plus people coming through. And it would be quite nice if some of the money that they spent was actually in our shops, in our little retailers as well, because they do try really hard and want to feel like, they're part of the city. The cycle track has changed that, of course, there's going to be more people coming through, not just cruise ship passengers. There will be cruise ship passengers cycling because there's going to be bikes for hire from the supermarket. It's going to be the place to be in the summer, I suspect. So it would be nice if we just looked a little bit more welcoming and upgraded. The footpaths look a bit rough. There's weeds growing out of footpaths. The walk that people do around Back Beach, they go 4 kilometres either direction. The footpaths look a bit shabby. I think they're in the 21-22 plan to be upgraded, but that actually didn't happen in port itself. So, yeah, just a simple bit of asphalt here or whatever, just to improve the look of it would be really, really good. Okay. Cruise ship people, of course, I'd really like if we could get some sort of idea of whether or not there's been some discussions with Eyesight and Enterprise Dunedin about addressing the shuttle cost, because the shuttle cost from the port last year was like, anywhere between about $30 each way or one way. And who's going to do that when they can catch the bus out the gate for $2 something? Or for free if you've got a gold card, which often happens. So that's a bit of an issue for us, and we really would like to see the queues reduced this summer, because then people wouldn't miss appointments at the hospital, job interviews, going to school, all those sort of things that happened last summer. And I know it's regional council, they tried to be very good with the actual local bus service, but we need less tourists on the local bus. Even though they have a choice, that's great. But more of them on the shuttle would be really good, actually. So that's me at the moment. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms McElwain. It was great. And some of those things that you've raised, I certainly have sympathy for. Just a quick question before I go to councillors. When you say that you'd like to see more cruise ship passengers spend the time in Port Chalmers, do you feel as though you're not having that happen? My experiences have been such that when people get off a ship in a new location, they do actually spend quite a bit of time right just where the ship is docked, especially when it does dock.
For probably 11 or 12 years, I managed the volunteers who helped out at the wharf, and the reason why the group was formed was to try and get more people to go into Port Chalmers, and for various reasons that group isn't really there anymore, and some of them did help out last year but thought because they were just being told to get people into Dunedin, And, you know, people were asking, where's Port Chalmers? How far away is it? And of course, on the ship, they get told it's like 15, 25, 30 minutes away. But the number of people I said to over the years, you know, see that building there? That's Port Chalmers. And they had no idea that it was so close. And I guess there's a bit of a push to get people into Dunedin now from the terminal into town. And if they catch the local bus, they're going into town. And you sort of hope that they'll have a look when they come back. 1 year we did, or for a few years, we did actually manage to get the buses to stop at the top of the hill coming back so people could get off and walk down. And so they would have a look around. But I think it's probably the cruise companies that are part of the problem as well in terms of not encouraging people to go to Port Chalmers, unfortunately. And it's a very historic place. We're about to have, we're doing a major renovation of the museum, which will be open hopefully later this month into October. So that's going to be something quite unique, you know, and people love our museum anyway, so it would be nice if more than 200 people came through in a day where there's like 4,000 people in town.
So just one more question on that. Is there an easy walk or an easy way finding from getting off the ship to across the road into Port Chalmers?
Yeah, I mean, you could, there used to, well, Pūrātau used to have blue footprints on the footpath, but they've kind of worn off now. People used to follow those and they'd hop and they'd jump and kids thought it was great, and you know. But when they come out, there's a big sign on the terminal on the port side that says welcome to wherever. I haven't been on there for a wee while. But yeah, either says Port Chalmers or Otago Harbour or something, I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, when you come out, it's the road just goes round. We could look at, maybe it would be good to have like a red line like they do in Boston, where you follow the red line and that takes you to where you want to go locally. That was great. I mean, that was a really good thing in Boston. You just followed it and you knew you'd get back to your hotel and you knew that you'd actually get to the market and wherever along the way. So maybe we need to look at doing something like that to encourage people more to follow it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Questions, Councillor Barker?
Thank you, Chair. I have just a few questions. Quick question. Is there a bike counter on the new... There is? Okay. Steve answered that. So we've been advised by staff that there's a new cruise action plan being put together. Have you been approached by the cruise action group? I understand they've had one meeting, but I'm not sure whether they've connected with the community board, which would seem to me to be a high priority.
Push the button. I did go to the meeting, and the cruise action group decided, well, I mean, you know, the port people and the eyesight decided sort of that would be made up of local retailers and what have you, and all the people they have as part of that from in town as well. So we had the chance to suggest a person to go onto that group from locally, and 2 people applied to do that, and Anne from DigiArt was successful. So, and Anne's great, and they print the map that we used to hand out. I don't know if they're still doing that. So she'll be really good at reporting back, hopefully, to the community board, and I'll be, you know, keeping in touch with her anyway as to, you know, what's going on.
Yeah, because it looks like the community board, I have like about 6 or 7 things, which are a wide range of destination management issues to feed back into the cruise action plan. So you said that there's a retailer there, but I just wonder whether there's an opportunity for a community board member to be on that. I'm just raising that. Did you have the opportunity to put a community board member on?
My deputy chair and I were there. I didn't really get the feeling that they wanted a community board person. I sort of felt that they wanted mostly people that weren't in that role, really, was just the impression I felt like I was getting.
I'm sure that we'll follow up in terms of reference for that. My next question is, because you've talked about one of the things that you like to see as an upgrade of the main street, and we've just been chatting about our long-term plan pre-engagement coming up, and I guess we want signals before we get into that. So, put you on the spot. Have you got an idea of your 3 key priorities for our long-term plan?
Oh, the main street, obviously, public toilets, and the other one I'm not sure. We will be having a wee discussion soon about other, things like speed management plan and stuff. So it's going to be something that we'll be discussing to, work out our priorities.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Just listening to about the vibrancy of Port Chalmers and the cruise ship issues that take place. Every time I've been down there when the cruise ships have been down, the cruise ship market seems to be quite a hub of activity and add quite a bit of life to what's going on. Is there anybody else beyond that assists in that sense? And what's your sense of how active and important the cruise ship market is to the community of Port Chalmers on a cruise ship day?
Yeah, Julie does a good market, and she fills up the spaces when she can, because the buildings like the town hall are used for other things as well. I think the thing is, when we had an active group of volunteers, they were encouraging people to go out to port, and used to, make it quite clear to people who wanted to go out to port that they were allowed to, because a lot of people felt that they had to catch the bus out. And also they got in the queue and nobody told them that they could just go out. And so we used to go up and down and say, oh, what's, do you have a shuttle ticket? And, oh, no, I want to go out to port, come with me. And we'd take them out. And so there'd be that sort of personal service, really, which actually worked really well. And, lots of people asked a lot of questions about that sort of, when you had them there captive. The market's good. That's a business. She goes out and touts for business and encourages people to come into the town hall. And last season, she, off her own bat, used one of her security people. I don't know how many she's got, but she said she used one of them at the bus queue to keep the bus queue in order. So, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be good to have buskers and things like that as well, but at the moment it's not. I suppose there's Chalmers Place, which is really good, and there's a couple of seats down at Huckett's Corner, but they're not sort of places that cruise people seem to go, and the footpaths are sort of narrow in places that don't really encourage people to juggle or busk or do other things, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ange. And you've forgotten your presentation to mention that Port Chalmers is by far the best place in New Zealand to live, but I'll forgive you for that. 3 questions. Firstly, just going back to what the Deputy Mayor touched on, the street upgrade, of which there's funding set aside for, I think it's called Centres Upgrade in the long-term plan. I'm just wondering, as Chair of the Board, have you had ongoing discussions with anybody within DCC around where that sits and how it will emanate?
Not yet, no. I mean, we tend, obviously, staff don't come to meetings the same as they used to discuss these things. So it's obviously going to be a topic that's going to be on our agenda a lot more in the coming months. We've actually only got this meeting coming up next week in November. That's gone very quickly.
Thank you. And second question is, and thanks, of course, to the board for its ongoing advocacy to get the shared path completed. The one bit of feedback I've had more than anything is the fact that when you end the path at Port Chalmers, and I've been guilty of this myself until I was told off by one of the citizens in Port, the natural thing is to go onto the footpath, the pavement. It's just natural to keep going, and I think that presents a problem. Do you think that problem could just be rectified by simple signage that isn't currently there?
Yes, I spoke to Jason Forbes at Transport New Zealand yesterday about that, because some of the shopkeepers have experienced people having to jump out of the way of a cyclist coming down the footpath. And he said, yes, there is a sign that's going to be there that says that shared paths finishes here. I would like, and I said to him, I'd really like something that says, could you please, push your bike onto the footpath. He said the actual design, which I really didn't know, the actual design is designs that people will come off and go onto the footpath and then carry on up the street, but not necessarily on their bikes. I would hope that they'd get off and walk. So we probably need some more signage about that as well, which he said wouldn't be a problem to do.
And the final question, I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate here, and it involves public toilets. And I mean, you won't find anywhere in the world that doesn't think it has enough public toilets. And I was just doing a wee count here, and I've written down, there's already 5 public toilets, 4 available in cafes or bars, not to mention the supermarket, the garage museum, and 1 coming to St Leonard's. So the question is, what quantum of toilets is seen as desirable? And do you think the current number we have now on a per capita basis is pretty exceptional or not?
No, I don't think it is exceptional, actually. The supermarket, the garage, cafes, they're for the people who are using those things. They're not just for people to whip in off the street and quickly go to the toilet and leave again without spending any money, I would hope. So at the moment we have 2 at Kerry's Bay, which were built by Port Otago. We've got the 2 in George Street on the main street by Futamaki, or the Pioneer Hall there. And there is 2 in the library. And I'm not sure how many in the new Port Otago building, because I haven't been in just yet. But that's not a huge number of toilets, really, for the number of people that come through Port in the summer. And the thing is that the cycleway is going to bring more people in throughout the year now, not just in the summer when we have the cruise ship passengers. So it's going to increase the numbers of people coming into Port. And there's always a child who wants to go to the toilet, like, oh, and they had the opportunity but said no, and then they suddenly want to. So the one at St Leonard's will be good, because that's about the halfway mark. But I have no idea of the design or what have you. I was told the other day it was going to be similar to the one at Outram, and I haven't actually seen that one. So, because that's going to be a short-term solution, because a permanent toilet's going to cost a lot of money to put in the drainage and what have you. So
thanks for that. So I'm definitely
Sorry,
not.
Councillor Walker, we're going to have to really wrap this up. We're pretty much out of time.
I'll do it.
You're okay. Great. So we are out of time for questions. I'm sorry. However, we have 3 councillors that have already signalled they want to ask a question. So I'm going to ask that they ask a question very quickly, and ask you, Ms. have I got it right? McElwain, after trying to get it right before, if you could be really succinct with your answers. Thank you. So first up is Councillor Lefiso.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. Tēnā koe, Ms. McElwain. You didn't mention this today, but I just looked at the minutes of the last presentation, and you talked about the board wanting to be involved in any discussions with Port Otago and Kiwi Rail about the train service. Has this happened? I haven't personally concentrated on any train service either, but just it's up to you.
Oh, no. Yep, not yet.
Well, that is succinct.
Yeah.
Councillor Gary.
Asked and answered.
That's even quicker. And finally, Councillor Mayhem.
You mentioned you noted mobility scooters and wheelchairs on the shared path, something that was raised at the opening. Do we have signs painted on the pathway that are pictures of walkers and pictures of cyclists? Do you think that we need a picture of someone on a mobility aid, like a wheelchair symbol, that we spray paint on the path just to signal accessibility for everybody on the shared path?
I think that would be really good, actually. We've got a sign that says use your bell, so why not? I think that would be really good.
Thank you, Ms McElwain. It's great to have the feedback from all community boards on this more regular basis, and it's great to know what's right at the front of your mind in terms of your domain. So thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll now move on to Mosgiel Taieri Community Board. Thank you. So now welcome to the table, Chairman of the Mosgiel Taieri Community Board, Andrew Sims. Welcome, Mr Sims.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for this opportunity. We'd like to take this opportunity to update the DCC on the current work of the Mosgiel Taieri Community Board and our future intentions. With me today, I've got first-time board member Catherine Anderson. She's going to talk about the opening of Te Puna o Whakaehu, the heavy transport public meeting, and the Memorial Park upgrade. I've also got long-serving Deputy Chair Dean McElwee with me. He's going to talk about the Taieri cycle trail between Mosgiel and Waihola. And then at the end I will talk about the Taieri Gorge working party. So I'd like to kick off with Catherine. Thank you.
And I'll just quickly remind you, you have 15 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll go to questions. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, good afternoon Mayor, councillors and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to update you on what's been happening on the Taieri. Te Puna o Whakaihu. We were privileged to be invited to the opening of Te Puna o Whakaihu on June 19th. Since its opening, attendance has been double what was projected, and there has consequently been no reduction in numbers at Moana Pool. This indicates that many more of our people are choosing to exercise at the pool, which is great news. While early feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, there has been some requests from the community to offer more for our older children, particularly during the school holiday periods. Discussions with DCC has resulted in some operational changes and additional resource to address this, which is appreciated. We will watch with keen interest as we head into the second school holiday period for the pool. Accessibility at the pool has been thoughtfully considered, and feedback for this has been well received. Overall, Te Puna o Whakaihu is a superb facility and a fantastic asset for our community. We wish to thank and acknowledge Irene Mosley and her team on the Taieri Community Facilities Trust for the huge amount of work that they had put in, and to the DCC for helping to bring this dream to reality. Heavy traffic public meeting. The number one priority of the Mosgiel Taieri Community Board's community plan for 2023 is the creation of a heavy traffic bypass for Mosgiel to separate the heavy traffic that transits through Mosgiel on State Highway 87 Gordon Road from the community that calls Mosgiel home. On July 18th, the Community Board held a public meeting in Coronation Hall regarding heavy traffic on Gordon Road. Much to our surprise, this was attended by 380 people, with a further 220 unique viewers on YouTube. This really does indicate the strong support for a bypass to take heavy transport away from Gordon Road and for other safety measures to be engaged. Elderly and less able citizens spoke of being too frightened to use Gordon Road. A local primary school principal spoke of numerous near misses, with children needing to cross Gordon Road to get to school. We also heard from a representative of the retailers on Gordon Road and the impact this has had on their business. The meeting was respectful, positive and constructive. The Community Board is looking for solidarity from the community towards finally getting a decisive outcome to an issue that has literally divided Mosgiel for decades. We wish to thank Councillor O'Malley for his honest and frank address, which was well received, and to the DCC for its commitment to commencing a study into the feasibility of a bypass for Mosgiel. Thank you also to Councillor Lucas, Councillor Weatherall and Deputy Mayor Barker for their attendance and support. Memorial Park Reserve Management Plan. The Mosgiel Tairi Community Board is keenly anticipating the upgrade to the Memorial Park Playground. The Board has actively encouraged the community to submit their ideas for the Reserve Management Plan for the parks, including Mosgiel Memorial Gardens, Mosgiel Memorial Park, Peter Johnston Park, including Murray Street Playground, and the Silverstream Walkway. We look forward to participating in the process to ensure that the recreational and sports assets on the Tairi are relevant and encourage participation. From talking with many in the community, there are a lot of great ideas out there, and many we will be advocating for. Traditional sports clubs on the Tairi are under pressure from falling participation and rapidly increasing costs. This challenge must be recognised by the community and addressed within council decisions. There is strong support for youth and young adult activities, and we look forward to advocating for this to be addressed in any future plans. There is currently a desperate need for a new skate facility with interest in a community council partnership to deliver this significant asset. This is a critical piece of work for our community. I'm happy to receive questions at the end of our presentation, but now I'd like to hand you over to Dean, who'll continue.
Thank you, Catherine, and good afternoon, councillors and staff. Just like to give you a brief update on the Mosgiel Tairi Community Board's position with the proposed cycle trail through the Tairi. So, while cycle trails in general have been making the headlines of late with the opening of Te Ara Moana, the shared walking and cycle path from Otipoti to Koputai, the Clutha Gold Trail that terminates at Waihola on the Dunedin boundary, thus leaving a void through to the Dunedin city. The Mosgiel Tairi Community Board would like to share with you an update on the proposed Tairi cycle trail. For those of you who are unaware, this trail will link the recently completed Clutha Gold Trail at Waihola through the Tairi Plains, via Berwick, along the foothills of the Mangatuas to link Woodside to Outram and on to Mosgiel, and ultimately onto Dunedin via the Tunnels Trail. Over the last 18 months, the Board has been working with the Tairi Trails Group on the feasibility study to make this a reality. Renowned track builder Hamish Seaton, whose prior accomplishments are the Alps to Ocean and the Old Ghost Road Trail, is heading the design work. Support has been positive thus far from the ORC to access the flood protection assets which will be critical in building this trail. Consultation with landowners between Mosgiel and Outram is underway and mostly completed. This completed feasibility study will be presented to the public on Tuesday, September the 12th at the Mosgiel Coronation Hall at 7 o'clock with representatives from DCC, ORC, Tunnels Trust, electoral candidates, Runanga and local landowners. The proposed trail is paramount to not only the Tairi but the city of Dunedin, which we are all here today representing. This trail will attract thousands of visitors to Dunedin rather than having their ride terminated at the Dunedin city boundary. It will provide a low-cost, low-carbon, easily accessible recreational asset for our community and provide a safe off-roading commuting option to link Outram to Mosgiel. In conjunction with this proposal, the Mosgiel Tairi Community Board is also working with the Tairi Lions and the Tairi Rotary, alongside Hamish Seaton to design and build a walking, cycling trail from the Outram Township via Mountfort Street and under State Highway 87 to the Outram Glen and up to the Tairi Historical Museum and the Otago Vintage Machinery Club Museum and return to the township. Just to note, there seems to be very few people who know these historic museums exist, tucked away under the hillside, something we want to showcase. This project would not be possible without support from the DCC Parks team and the generous landowners. The long-term big picture is to link the small loop track to the proposed trail from Waihola to Outram and Mosgiel to the Outram Glen. This, along with the DCC's plan to upgrade the Outram Glen this financial year, would provide a safe passage for all users to access these facilities without crossing our now extremely busy state highway. The possibilities are endless for what cycling can do for our community. the owners of the Wahola Tavern and Dairy. Already they have seen a massive influx in people and sales since the opening of the Clutha Gold Trail. Times are changing. Dunedin is famous for many things: Larnax Castle, the historic railway station, and now cycling. Dunedin has been rated as the second best city destination for cycling by TripAdvisor for 2023. Let's keep that momentum going and support the Mosgiel Tauri community in their quest to build this trail for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine and Dean, for great presentations. Only through disagreement, here we go, only through disagreement will we reach the right answer. The Mosgiel Tauri Community Board is part of the Otago Central Rail Trail Trust Tauri Gorge Working Party, which is producing a feasibility study and economic benefit study into the conversion of the Tauri Gorge Rail Corridor into a world-class cycle trail connecting Dunedin to the established and highly successful Otago Central Rail Trail. These comprehensive studies will be completed and presented to Council and to ratepayers and to the ratepayers of Dunedin before the end of this year. In 1992, the DCC entered into an agreement between itself and the Crown to purchase the assets of the Tauri Gorge Railway and to lease 62 kilometres of rail corridor between Wingatui and Middlemarch. The deal was necessitated by the parlous financial position that the Otago Excursion Train Trust had found itself in, despite the train trust being largely staffed by volunteers and running on tracks owned by New Zealand Rail. In 1992, the DCC paid off the debts of the Otago Excursion Train Trust to the Crown and purchased the rolling stock and train tracks. Most importantly, the DCC leased the formation of the railway and the full length of the rail corridor from the Crown for a term of 80 years for $1 plus GST per year. There is no provision in the lease agreement for the Crown to escape from the lease, and there is no provision in the lease agreement for the rent to ever increase from $1 per annum. The lease expires in 2072. Significantly, the lease anticipates that one day the rails might be removed by the DCC and the rail corridor might be repurposed. This is the most advantageous deal ever entered into by the DCC on behalf of the ratepayers of Dunedin since the John Wycliffe came up the harbour. 62 kilometres of formed access through the most beautiful part of Dunedin with magnificent Victorian tunnels and viaducts for $1 plus GST per annum. Yet today, the Tauri Gorge Railway represents a multi-million-dollar liability for Dunedin ratepayers. Tens of millions of dollars of unbudgeted ratepayers' money is required to catch up on the deferred maintenance for the railway. Recently, the DCC tipped another $500,000 of ratepayers' cash into Dunedin Railways, not to improve the railway, but to cover the trading losses from the 2022-23 season. That represents this year's subsidy from the ratepayers, many of whom cannot afford to take their own family on the train and who are therefore locked out of the Tauri Gorge, but who are nevertheless required to subsidise cruise ship passengers and other visitors to take the train ride. Once the studies are completed, the Tauri Gorge Working Party will present its detailed case to Council and to the ratepayers in an honest and transparent manner. We hope for the same from Dunedin Railways, so that the Council and the community can make an informed decision about the future of the Tauri Gorge, based on this is what each option will cost, this is where the funding might come from, and this is the economic and social benefit to our city. This is the estimate of the ongoing maintenance costs for each option. Once the numbers are on the table, then the other aspects which will lead us to the right decision should be considered by Council and ratepayers. Which activity will attract high-value visitors to Dunedin? Visitors who might stay for a few days, stay in our accommodation and contribute to the wider economy. Which activity will provide low-cost recreational access to the magnificent Tauri Gorge for the community? We note that this, between now and the end of the year, Other visitors other than cruise ship passengers and Dunedin's residents will only have 7 opportunities to ride on the train up the Taieri Gorge. 7 times between now and the end of the year. For the rest of the days, for the other days, other than those 7 days, everybody is locked out of that gorge by the current arrangement. Which activity is resilient and which activity is appropriate to how we see our city in 2030, in 2040 and perhaps in 2070? Which activity best contributes to Dunedin's zero carbon goals for 2030? Or are we saying one thing and doing another? Which activity best respects the land and upholds the principles of kaitiakitanga? The working group sincerely hopes that this conversation can be had in an open and honest manner, free of misinformation, free of redaction, and free of melancholy attached to the past. We're very happy to receive questions. Thank you.
Thank you to the three of you. Questions, councillors. Councillor Vandevus.
You've talked about a comprehensive rail trail investigation studies that are going forward at the moment. How much are they costing and who's paying for them?
Thank you, Lee. They're costing $45,000. That's between the feasibility study and the economic benefit study. That's being funded by the Otago Central Rail Trail Trust and also by donors.
Thank you. And can you give me a rough idea of what proportion was donors of the 45,000?
$30,000.
Impressive. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Mayor Raddick.
As far as that that trail is concerned, that trail would still use the viaducts that exist between Outram and Middlemarch?
The feasibility study that Hamish Seaton is doing is considering 2 options. Joining the track at Pukerangi, and then through to Hindon, and then down to Outram Glen via a disused walking track between Outram Glen and Hindon. And the second part of the study is using the rail corridor for the full length between Pukerangi and North Taieri.
In the first option you've described, does that involve using the rail viaducts in the middle section?
Sorry, yes, that relies on using the bridges and the formation of the railway between Pukerangi and Hindon.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Just want to go back to the park and the development of that aspect, because you talked about the skate park and upgrading the other facilities there. How was the community engaged in that, and what was the feedback?
We had a stall at Party in the Park earlier in the year, so we had a number of people come through and discuss certain topics, and the skate park was definitely one that a lot of people felt passionate about. As you know, or may not know, our skate facility had irreparable damage, so we don't have a suitable one at the moment.
And was it all positive, or was there any negative around the skate park, or?
I think it's completely positive towards having a skate park. I think the discussion with the community starts when you talk about the location, so there's some disagreement about where that should be.
So on the board Facebook page on the 23rd of May, it talks about this is vital, we need your help to get what you need. There are already anti-skate submissions into the DCC. I'm just trying to work out where that came from, and because when I talked to Parks about that, they said there weren't any anti-submissions at the time, and I just want to get clarity around how you're communicating to the community in your area.
Yep, that came from a Facebook post that we placed on Mosgiel Notice Board encouraging feedback. So Parks and Rec came to us and said, we've had virtually no feedback from Mosgiel people towards the reserve management plan. That post drew quite a number of anti-skateboard comments from people attached to the Friends of the Memorial Park group. And so, and that's reasonably typical. So we took some steps to mobilise the people that were in favour of the skateboard park to put in submissions.
I know I'm not in the ability to only ask questions. So the question I've got is, do you think that was an appropriate way to talk about anti-skate submissions being made when there had been no anti-skate submissions being made? The Parks Department has said they never received any when they viewed that Facebook post.
I'll take responsibility for that. That was on the basis of the feedback that we had received to the Facebook post from people saying that they did not want a skate facility within Memorial Park.
Councillor O'Malley.
Hey, Mr. Chair. It's to Dean and the Waihola Outram. Are you, when you mention Outram Glen, are you now envisaging you'll cross the Taieri using the current road bridge, or is that cycleway still going to need a bridge at some point near?
No, the proposed trail Outram to Mosgiel would be a new bridge down what they call the chute, which is off Lindsay Road, so just off Riverside Road, so not using the existing bridge at State Highway 87. Yes, correct.
And then I noticed the other thing you're doing sounds a lot like what's going on up on the north coast, trying to get those cycleways or linked together, as they're doing community to community shorter runs and then hopefully putting the thing together. So were you describing a smaller community cycle activity now, which can then basically be used to build onto to build the longer and bigger one later?
That's exactly what we're doing. So the local community, the Lions, Rotary, have always been talking about a cycle, well actually it was a walkway initially for the last 5 or 6 years. COVID come along, nothing happened. So with our involvement with the proposed cycleway, we have come in with the board and progressed that, and we've turned the walkway into a cycle walkway with lower gradients, which will be more compatible for the elderly. So it's all about planning, big picture. Even if we're gone, this can continue, and we will have a small loop which will link up with the existing and proposed route in the future.
And then makes the barrier to the bigger one a bit smaller because you've already knocked some of it off. Cool, thank you.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. At the public meeting for the heavy traffic, Port Otago did quite a presentation in terms of their inland freight base at North Taieri, and they gave the impression that that was going to progress relatively quickly. Have Port Otago been in touch? Is there any progress on that?
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. The latest information we have is that Port Otago are intending to turn dirt in October on the land that they already own surrounding the Fonterra plant, but we've had there's been no further update beyond that.
Thank you. And the last time that you came to present to us, you talked about the Silverstring flood protection. Is there any, and the fact that the ORC hadn't been doing any work on maintaining the Silverstring, has there been any progress on that you're aware of today?
Yes, there has been significant progress on that. So in response to and it was certainly probably give you a much more comprehensive update next time around, but in response to the submissions from the residents of the Gordon Road floodway, we saw a seismic shift in the position of the Otago Regional Council and a significant shift in the position of the DCC towards the matter, which has meant that now that the parties are very close together, noting that the parties were close together, the legal representation for the Gordon Road Spillway Group called a meeting of the DCC's solicitors and the ORC's solicitors and the Gordon Road Spillway Group in an attempt to reach a resolution. That meeting was productive, and we are expecting a response from the ORC within 2 weeks, of which I'm sincerely hopeful that a resolution that will suit everybody, including the DCC, will be reached.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. This is to Dean, just about the Clutha Gold Trail, and I just wondered, obviously Dunedin is a famous city built on gold, about whether there've been any discussions about the Dunedin Gold Trail, or whether the Clutha Gold Trail was thinking about an Otago Gold Trail to link those things through. Had that been discussed?
I like the way you're thinking, but not at this stage. We have spoken to that group, but as far as that continuation of a theme, not yet to be discussed. I think we're looking at possibly putting some information out and almost creating a bit of a competition within the community for naming rights. There's certainly some interesting ones already, like the wetland trail, or because we are going through a swamp. There's lots of issues and interesting times ahead. So the continuation, I think it'll be great, but we're going to probably put some feedback out into the public and see what comes back. Cheers.
Are there any further questions? If not, Catherine, Andrew and Dean, thank you very much for your presentation. Very professional and definitely bang on topic in terms of your desires for the future for your area. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item number 7, Civic Affairs Committee Forward Work Programme. Ms Graham, do you have any comments?
No, I'm happy to take questions.
Excellent. Councillors, do you have any questions in relation to the Forward Work Programme? Councillor Walker?
Yeah, just around, there's a few things on there that are on hold that I guess less training, we're going to progress, so review of standing orders, code of conduct, just maybe some commentary around why that is.
Simply at the minute, we don't have capacity to progress the work. The team are stretched and there's a lot of work required to do this.
That was my question, even though I already knew the answer. Any other questions, councillors? If not, I will move that the committee notes the Forward Work Programme. Seconder, Councillor Walker. Discussion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now we move on to item number 8, recognition of former mayors. And I think Mayor Radica is going to exit the room, even though he's not a former at this stage. Probably not for another 15 or 20 years. Okay, so before we get on to questions, is there any comment, Ms Graham?
No, we are certainly happy to take questions.
Questions? Pardon? Yeah, I'll just signal that I do have a motion to move once we've finished with questions, and if that doesn't sit with folk, then of course you can either move an amendment or foreshadow a new motion if it loses. But in the meantime, let's get stuck into questions. Councillor Gary.
I'm not sure who, I'll ask the Chief this. So number 17, paragraph 17, around the portraits. Not all past mayors clearly have had a portrait painted. Do we know why some were and some weren't? And do we have a list of who? And
there will be a list. We don't know why, because we've had amalgamation. We've had a range of different things, but all of them have the photos that sit in that area outside the Mayor's office. Yeah. So there's a photographic history there. The portraits are a bit more variable.
Any further questions, councillors? I suppose it's a fairly straightforward report. Oh, another question, Councillor Garrett.
A subsequent question. I know this paper is around the mayors, and I've asked this question before. At a time when the spouse of the mayor, and in most cases that was a woman, so it was the mayoress, there's very little in the archives about them. Has any thought been given in this research to that?
No.
Okay, questions exhausted. I must admit this one surprises me. That's okay. So we'll move on to the motion that I would like to move. And so, just to read that out, that that the committee approves commissioning a photographic portrait to recognise the service of mayors, former mayors, beginning with former Mayor Hawkins. B, that we confirm that the service of former mayors will continue to be recognised by the addition of a new link in the mayoral chain. C, authorises the cost of future new links to be funded from council budgets beginning with former Mayor Hawkins. And D, asks staff to investigate options and costs for a possible mayoral scholarship and provide a report to a future committee meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lefiso, thank you. So I will speak to it, of course, first, and quite simply, when we look at what has happened in the past and how things have changed, I think it makes perfect sense that we acknowledge our former mayors with photographic content rather than portrait. Costs are very, very clearly massively different in that regard. When it comes to the mayoral chain, I think it's right that council pays for that as opposed to the outgoing mayor. And when we talk about further acknowledgement of former mayors, that looking into the mayoral scholarship, I think, is something that is on point when it comes to encouraging and fostering future potential leaders of the city, in particular in the younger sector. So that's all I really have to say on it. Speakers, Councillor Mayhem.
It's a little bit of a question, really. Yes. I wondered if we could vote this in parts, because I don't agree with all of it. And also, just on Part D, the scholarship, how would that be funded and ongoingly? And would that mean a new scholarship in the name of every mayor? And how would that be administered?
Well, yeah, okay, we don't know that yet. That's why that part of the resolution is asking for staff to investigate the options and the costs and bring that back to us. So we're not actually committing to that part at the moment. It's only requesting the information. It may well be when it does come back, the committee or council will decide not to do it. But we can certainly take them separately. Councillor Vandervis.
Are we having questions first or straight into debate?
Well, we technically are in debate, but I suppose if there's any questions, you can raise them. Yeah.
My question really is regarding the mayoral chain and the links that are $2,400 odd each. Why would we want to keep making a mayoral chain even heavier when we already have a second one in storage?
Well, I can't answer why you might want to. What I would say is if you refer to what happens at the metropolitan councils around the country, they all still provide a link in the chain, and it is one of those things that is done everywhere. There's a consistency around that. We may need to consider in the future what we do with the second chain, but that just isn't something that's been done at the moment, but it currently does sit in the safe.
Can I ask a question as well? Just adding on to that. So the new links as they come by, do they get added to the current chain that is worn, and that the older links go onto the chain that isn't worn?
Well, you'll appreciate that in recent times there's only been one link. So in the time that Claire and I have been here, there's only been one link put in the chain, and that was former Mayor Culls. And so I don't have a lot of experience to which to guide that. I believe that is in the chain that the Mayor currently wears, but I'd have to check. Oh.
It's just been pointed out that Wellington no longer link for chain in the paper on page 27.
10 of the 11.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for letting us ask questions in debate. My question was going to be in terms of because I'm agnostic on a picture or a painting, has any consideration been given to the size of the photograph? Will it be the same size as the paintings? I'm just asking that, being cognizant of the fact that we're going to get relatively shorter space.
No, and we could consider that, but I think the intention had been something that was in a similar style to Mayor Turner's portrait.
So any other questions or speakers, because we are in debate as well? Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you. Thank you. In regards to the links in the chain, I have a problem with the chain just getting longer and longer, and some links falling off and going back into storage for the end of time. But I know that it does happen around lodges and different other organisations that they repurpose links, and I guess there would be a problem with that if previous links were funded by the individual or individual's family, so that's probably not an option. But there would be an option of future links being not just for one particular mayor, but to cover several mayors. It's in the engraving of the link, in which case you could actually have one link to represent more than one mayor.
That is certainly something we would look to accommodate, because at the minute the engraving seems pretty inefficient on the back of the links, and even there might be a different way, and it might be that you create a link that is, you know how the medallion hangs from quite a big link, you might create a bigger link, a bit like the honours board, that could have 10 names in the back of it, and that would solve the issue for 10 traineums, or even longer if you have a multi-term mayor.
I would be more comfortable with that sort of option.
So that's potentially something we could wordsmith to go into that particular part of this resolution, because the resolution at the moment doesn't reflect that.
No, we could change B. If that's the will of the meeting, we could tweak B slightly.
Well, as the mover, I'm more than happy to do so. Councillor Fuso, as the seconder, are you? You're happy to do that? I'll let you wordsmith that. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. At present, just to clarify, each link has just the name at the moment of one mayor, is that correct? Yeah. And the reason it's done is to acknowledge that past former mayor and their work, isn't it? That's why it's done, and that's why every other city bar one in the country does it. Is that correct?
That's my understanding of why they do it.
Councillor O'Malley.
I'm just looking at the cost going. If a link is 2,400, then it's correct in saying it's $800 a year for a one-term mayor and $400 a year for a two-term mayor. To which I just generally ask the general question: is this going to break the budget or not?
The budget is tight.
And it is tight, and I must penny wise, pound foolish though. And then the other question would be, at the moment, the links that are not on the chain are being stored somewhere, but could they be used in a mechanism of remembering the continuity in the line of the mayors, so that at the cost of $2,500, we're keeping a continuous design pattern going, that maybe they wear 50 years worth of links and the rest are sitting somewhere else to be displayed?
There has been discussion. The links aren't just sitting somewhere randomly. They form the part, just so we know, so we're clear, a second chain. The order of the links in the respective chains is, however, somewhat random. I would have to say that doesn't appear to be, that would be fair clear. Yeah, there's no clear logic to which links are in which chain, and so it might be that depending on where you land, that it's time to reimagine the chain and do something like that, so that you keep the first five in the most recent X number, so you have a bit of history and a bit of, on the chain. There's also thought about the second chain being displayed at our council facility, but I would really want to test doing that for reasons that I don't want to go into. But you can imagine what they might be. Brent's nodding.
You happy with that? Councillor Gilbert.
Well, the Chief has actually just kind of spoken to my question, which was about displaying them at something like OSA, early settlers. So.
Councillor Gary.
We're in debate.
I've got no idea.
Okay, well...
what I'm suggesting at the moment, because we've got people that have asked questions who have signalled to speak again, so I'm suggesting that if you've got a question, that's not counted as your
No, I'm ready to
speech.
debate.
So you want to debate?
Yes.
So that's fine. We'll take the questions first. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I have another question. It's to the mover and the seconder. As to why there was no consideration given to the question around the honours board and whether that should be as we do currently, or if it should be congealed into one at the end of whatever term that may be, or was the omission purposeful because you want to keep what it is?
I may have helped the chair draft this, but I was left up in the recasting of B. We're happy to look at adding in an E, and my suggestion there would be that you just have one name with the service rather than three names in a row, and that way the honours boards will last well past the time people...
Sorry, that's what I was going to propose. So if you're happy to add that.
So add that as yeah. Okay. So we're going to take a break just in a moment, but let's exhaust questions first. Councillor Vandervis.
There's been discussion that there's not enough room to hang these portraits or photos. Is it possible, or has it been thought of, to hang them in the main stairway leading up to the council chambers, because there's a massive, quite frankly boring wall right round that beautiful stairway? Is that a possibility, or is there a reason we don't have anything there?
No, there's no good reason why we don't, and so apart from the fact that those stairways are access to rooms other than the council chamber, so I'm sure that was part of the thinking at the time. But there's any number of ways we can hang the portraits that we have and future portraits, albeit maybe not in the same place. The second floor is about to have a refresh. It might be appropriate that portraits are hung there as well. So I think that space shouldn't necessarily be the constraint, because we've got plenty of wall space.
Okay, if we're finished with questions, we'll just take a 5 minutes, a 5-minute recess, and then come back and review. I'll move it. Thank you, Councillor Fiso. All those in favour say aye. Against, thank you, carried. back to order, thank you. As we can all see on the board, there's been some slight changes to the motion. So it was more around item B in relation to the engraving of a link in the mayoral chain. That the cost, that's still the same. Yeah. Don't need them, okay. We can always polish the back of your head, if that would help, Councillor Gilbert. Okay, back to order. And we've added E as, shall we say, gently discussed earlier, just in relation to the Honours Board. So, Councillor Lafisa, are you happy with those changes? So it's moved and seconded. Because we've made a couple of changes, we're going to stay in question time, even though it's moved and seconded. And once we're finished with questions, we will then go into debate. So any further questions, or have we exhausted them before? Councillor Lucas.
So when we say in B, the engraving of a link, that doesn't mean to say that it is a new link, even though C says authorise the cost of future new links. So it just says a link. So it could be alongside.
We think it's
interpretable however. Okay.
And we will make sure that we have a minute document or something that reflects this conversation. So
that was my next point, is that for future, because I know that trying to find the past, what was the meaning of past resolutions and discussion, and that was all that was my next, where I was heading. Yes.
So we might write a summary document that says in one place that recognition of former mayors will be as follows, blah, 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 blah. Dated stamp it, put it somewhere that can be.
Any further questions? Councillor Mayhem. Councillor Hurd.
We haven't talked about revising the mayor's special costume. Are we happy with the 1959 red coat?
It's not on this, on this report.
It wasn't something we were asked to do, and so wasn't within the scope of this report.
Maybe it could be another one another time. Councillor Vandevers. Sorry, Councillor Hurley, then Councillor Vandevers.
Thank you. On point A, so I'm just clarifying that rules out a painting altogether, does it, if we support that?
A painting for, yes, it does.
So, like, I'm wondering...
You'll need your microphone. Microphone.
Sorry, does that mean that mayor, that then we'd have to go through a whole new resolution, like there's no option for them to have a painting if they want one? Is that the case if we vote on this?
That's correct.
Councillor Vandevers. Did you have a question?
Is it possible for a possible painting to be paid for by the Dunedin Public Art Gallery acquisitions budget?
Well, it doesn't fit with this set of...
I don't believe the acquisitions budget would allow the commissioning of a portrait of the mayor. There's barely enough anyway, if you talk to Cam.
Councillor Barker.
Quick question. It doesn't state in the report what the cost of a photograph is. It says less expensive option than a painted portrait. Is there an idea about how much less?
Well, the last mayoral one of the mayoral photographs, paintings was $23,000. No, the photograph, the only one that we have is the one of Mayor Turner, and I couldn't tell you what that cost, and we didn't cost it, but I know what we pay for all the photographs we get as part of the induction. I can't imagine, we can find out what it was, but it might run to a couple of thousand by the time you framed it, but I can't imagine that it would be much more than that. But I could find out.
Councillor Andrews.
Can I just add that I was still there when that portrait was an issue, and that the cost of the painted portrait for Mayor Turner was $6,000, and it was done by one of the leading portrait artists of the country. I believe there is somebody that lives in Dunedin who's a well-respected portrait artist by the name of Bill Graham, lives in Ravensbourne, I think, who could do something similar for similar money, just to not scare people away with the $23,000 pot, which was once paid, but I think probably an exception.
If I would just clarify, we have gone out seeking expressions of interest. I think the last time we tried to get a mural portrait painted, and nothing came back that was in the vicinity of $6,000 from anyone who expressed interest. So I'm just, well, we got stares from a range of people around the art community. We got them from all sorts of people, and they were significantly higher than that.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll go into debate. And even though I've already spoken to this, it's new now, so I'm going to speak again, as everybody else can also. I'm not going to go through each line item. The main thing I really want to add is that I think it's great that everybody has had a go at tidying up these set of resolutions, and that at the end of the day, what we're looking for is something that's actually going to work, something that is more affordable, something that I think, based on some of the issues we've had over the years with paintings and people not liking them, that the photo portrait is the way to go these days. Tidying up the chain and having a chain added to, link in the chain, having that added whereby it doesn't have to be a new link every time, and being able to, actually get on to acknowledging former Mayor Hawkins by getting this underway and getting it done. So thank you for your input, for those who have helped scope this, and when we finish debate we can work out which ones we're going to take separately. Speakers, Councillor Vandervis, Councillor Gary, Councillor Houlihan.
Given that we've got a second chain in storage anyway, I think we should just simply pull the chain on the chain. We've got a heavy enough chain for the current metal wear. We've got another one in reserve. Adding to it at $2,400 a pop, to me, makes no sense. In terms of the whether we have a photograph or a painting, in any triennium there are literally scores of mayoral photos that are widely available on the media, and to have an official photo probably similar at the cost of a few $1,000s as the recognition of mayoral service, to me, is just simply to have another photo, and to me it has very little value at all. What I would prefer is that we actually find an artist who can produce a portrait at a reasonable cost, and I think they are available. I've just thought of another one that I could press into service, and then we would have an artwork that actually gives an interpretation of something that probably in some cases will be controversial. I'm reminded of Mayor Turner's vanity in disliking her own portrait so much that she actually had to buy it herself to keep it out of...
Point of order, Mr Chair. I don't think that was necessary. That was disrespectful.
So which point of order are you raising?
Vanity.
Which one is it, please?
Thank you. 25.2, and I don't have the letter, but it's around disrespectful.
Councillor Vandervis, are you happy to withdraw that?
Sorry, what needs to be withdrawn?
The comment in relation to the former Mayor's vanity.
Is that not an established fact?
No, it's your opinion, and it has been taken as somewhat offensive. So.
Oh right, okay. So I'll withdraw that comment, but let's not forget the fact that that particular ex-mayor Turner actually did buy her own portrait simply to keep it out of the public view. when it's also a matter of record that the artist concerned, when asked why she thought that Ms Turner didn't like the portrait, said, quote, that it showed that she had an insecure mouth. The point I'm trying to make is
Councillor Vandevers, no, hold on. Councillor Vandevers, all
Yes.
we're going to do here is discuss what's on here. We're not going to talk about the past in terms of names, specific photos, specific paintings. We're going to stick to the 5 recommendations on the board, and I just ask you to be very careful with how you actually refer to other people.
I've simply referred only to articles that were made public in the Otago Daily Times at the time by way of illustrating the difference that we have between a portrait, which can be controversial, and I think sometimes should be, or a photograph, which is every other day available for, in the media anyway. I see very little value in another photograph for the Mayor, albeit an official photograph or not. The real value I see in the portrait, as opposed to what's been recommended above, is that we actually end up having a work of art. And a work of art is something that has a value that no photograph can ever get near. And for that reason, I think we should consider a proper painting as opposed to a photograph, despite the fact that there is additional cost, because it's something that we get that is unique for the city. It is something that keeps a long tradition going, if we want to keep a tradition going. Much more in favour of doing that than going the gold chain. And if you look at the value of these paintings going forward, imagine 20, 30, 50 years' time, nobody's going to want to look at yet another photograph of the Mayor because the internet will be full of them. But a painting with an artist's interpretation would have some real interest long term, and I think have real value for the city. So that would be my argument against confirming the chain I've already spoken to. B, I don't think we should bother with that because I just don't see the value in more of the same when we're already storing one. Authorising future links to be funded from council budgets, obviously I disagree with that as well. D, ask staff to investigate options and costs for a possible mayoral scholarship. To me, this is just nebulous. A scholarship for what? How does a scholarship recognise a mayor's contribution to the city? I don't see that as being really appropriate either. The Honours Board update I could go with, which is E. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hope that you will indulge me for a moment. We think of ourselves as a heritage city, and in 1909, the mayor of this city was James Hamlin Walker. He was a businessman, he'd been a plumber, he became a share broker, and I just want to give you an indication of what he achieved in his one-year term. In those days, it was a one-year term, and he did not seek re-election. He set up a committee for the review of bylaws. He was chairman of the Otago Hospital and Charitable Aid Board, and he campaigned for the extension of the hospital and a sanatoria. He was chairman of the Otago Harbour Board, he was a member of the University Council, and he also raised funds for the premises of the Dunedin Returned Service Association. He was my grandfather's brother. In the war years, in the Second World War, Andrew Allen was the mayor, again a businessman, and he raised the funds, amongst other things, for the Dunedin room in Edinburgh, as we have an Edinburgh room here in our council building. And so I went looking for the links on the chain that had their names on it, and they were very difficult to find. They're on the second chain that is hidden away, but they are there. So I consider it to be a really important part of our history, and I do understand that the chain is very heavy. I do understand we can't keep adding to it and using it on the chain that is used at the moment. I would like to think we could in some way display it, but clearly there are some reservations on that that the Chief has identified. In terms of a portrait, I went looking for portraits and couldn't find any, so that was very variable, as we've been told, in terms of who had portraits painted and who didn't. The costs are getting up there. But in terms of portrait versus photograph, I would come down on the side of a portrait, painted portrait, because I see it as an investment in the arts sector. And we have some really notable portrait artists here, and there's one that I know of that has a portrait that has been hung previously in the Portrait Gallery in London. That's Simon Richardson. In terms of the Honours Board, again, just to indulge me for a moment, I have really enjoyed looking over and found it inspiring to look at both James Walker's name and Andrew Allen's on the Honours Board, and I do think it's really important that we record those names, and I think the idea of the one line with the entire service is a good one, so I can support that. I think that the scholarship idea has real merit. I was involved in establishing scholarships at community board level, and I've seen the good that they have done. I think that would be an amazing legacy in this day and age, maybe tuned into a particular interest of a former mayor. I think that has great possibilities and could be an investment in our young people. I did just want to note one final thing, and that was to say, it saddens me that our mayoresses are not. You cannot find out much information about them at all in the archives. They worked extremely hard and made a contribution to this city. And the one out of James Walker and his wife, Isabel Blakey, she was a suffragette. I was very excited to find that out. Andrew Allen's wife is the only one that I knew in her lifetime, Auntie Etta. She was a great favourite, and she worked very hard during the war years and made a great contribution to the city, and yet nobody would know she was even in that role. Thank you.
Councillor Hulan.
Thank you. Yes, so with this motion, I'm happy to support all the points bar A. I don't agree with A. I really like the previous last two speakers. I would really love to see, if it's possible, obviously if we can't get an artist, well then it's another story. We have a photograph if we have to, but I would like to see a portrait painting because, like the other speakers have mentioned, I think it increases in value. It also gives an element of importance and significance to the role of mayor, whereas Councillor Vandervis said a photograph is just a photograph, and a mayor is photographed all the time, so it's nothing special. However, a piece of art is something special and something that should be hung in our chamber with pride. You know, when you walk into the chamber, that's something that initially it sort of slightly took my breath away when I walked in. When you look around and you see the faces looking back at you of previous mayors who have sat in those chairs and have come before us, and it makes you very aware that we are walking under in their shadows and now stepping on their shoulders to follow through in their footsteps as councillors, obviously for us, but for mayors. I really also like the link of the fact that whenever they wear the chain, they are carrying the names of the other former mayors who stood before them. And there's a lot that goes on the shoulders of a mayor, and to have that, it's really I suppose a symbolic thing, but to me it is a very strong symbolic thing that the names of all those former mayors sits with the mayor around their neck, except for the part that's put away in an archive somewhere. But anyway, but I do really think there is significance in that. And, you know, I could be a bit airy-fairy, I suppose my husband would say, oh no, Wimby moonshine stuff, but is that the spirit of those former mayors can stay with the mayor and carry along with them in their namesake that's around their neck, and I think that's really important. And I think it'd be a sad day if we just have a photograph to acknowledge a previous mayor. I would like to see paintings, and so I will not be supporting A, but I am happy to support the rest of although I do think the scholarship is messy. I like the idea, but what would the scholarship be in? How would it be maintained? I just see it being very costly, and I don't see, you know, I can see it creating a whole lot of work, and I'm not really sure, I'm not sure on that one either. So, thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to the portrait, I'm agnostic, and I was always going to go with the views of the room. To be honest, two things on the so portrait is a painting. The portrait on the portrait. Two things I will say. The only downside I do see not having a painting, of course, is the fact that it doesn't in some way help our struggling, or somebody in our struggling arts community, but that wouldn't be enough to sway my decision. The second thing is I've had the privilege of, in my role as a council rep on the Dunedin Edinburgh Sister City Society, I have the pleasure of taking tours on St Andrew's Day in November through the Edinburgh Room and the council chambers, which are really well attended. There's usually 30, 40 people. And when they enter that room, as Councillor Houlihan said, actually, they're quite blown away, actually, particularly the council chambers and the portraits. And the discussion or the commentary I can give around the portraits is always the one that has most interest, A, because of the history, and B, actually, when it gets to Suki Turner, because most people, in fact, all of them don't know it's a painting. They don't know it's a photo until it's pointed out. And also there's questions around why isn't somebody here, or blah, 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 or there'll be connections like Councillor Gary with their family lineage. So I don't think if it's a painting or a picture, it really detracts for me from the element of that room, because we are in 2023 and the discussion should be about how we've contemporized it and moved forward. So, yeah, that's how I feel about that. I support all of these, and I particularly support C. I'm glad C is up there. I just don't think there should be a burden on a previous mayor to fork out that money. And I do think I think it was Councillor Weatherall actually who came up with the clever idea actually of making more use of that link. I think that's a really sensible idea. So as I say, I'm pretty much gonna support all of these. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To some extent, we're looking at the cost or the maintenance of tradition, and tradition can be something which is stabilising, and it can also be something which is restrictive, and I think that people are considering that too when looking at this. But I look at a portrait as something more than an actual likeness of a person. I think I concur to the earlier speakers, because it also reflects the art of the time and the work of that artist. And in a natural, you don't go to the National Portrait Galleries to see likenesses, you go there to see the art. And so we have already got a tradition that we are already observing. As soon as you stop that tradition, it can no longer contain its value from that point on, because it's now been cut. So I think we need to take that into account. I am, like Councillor Walker, agnostic, but I am going to vote no to A, but I won't cry if it goes through. And then the links, again, I think it's that same thing. It's you know, in terms of the burden and all other such things, is it a big burden to put these links through as they stay right now? And on the other side of it, I think we've had plenty of ideas of what to do with the links when it gets beyond the carrying capacity of the mayor, and they can be put somewhere, and I think then perform a role as remembrance and continuity. So when this city's 1,000 years from now, if we keep that kind of thing, we'd have something which would be quite phenomenal to look at. Tonga, basically, you know, when you have a physical representation of something that you want to remember, it's important to have that physical representation. And then, so I'll be voting kind of yes to the rest of it, except for the scholarship, but except, the point is, at the moment, that's nebulous. We're asking for the options, and therefore would see what it would look like. And of course, the Honours Board's obvious. So basically, I'll be voting no on the first one and then yes to the rest.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. Good speech, Mr. O'Malley, because I think you might have changed my mind on something. I absolutely support the chain, and I was just going to talk about the chain of succession of the mayors throughout all of the people that have given service to our city. And I also wanted to talk about it being a visible reminder of the mana of the office. And in 2019, Mana Whenua gifted a pounamu that we see when we're in the council meetings, and I think it is a constant reminder of those relationships and those investments in people. And also I note that whenever the mayor is invited to represent the city, people always want to see the chains. It's actually something that's really special to the people that sit outside here, in a visible reminder of that, and they all love getting their photo taken, as we well know. So that's my short speech, so I will be supporting most of this.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. The first mayor of Dunedin was William Mason in 1865. Which was when the tradition presumably was started for having a painted medium portrait. The digital camera, on the other hand, was invented in 1975. Between those times, approximately 50 mayors came through, so it's easy to understand how tradition will keep going with the most popular and accessible medium of the time. It's been inferred through some of the discussions that painted works can be controversial while photographs cannot. And in fact, Councillor Houlihan stated, quote, "Photographs are nothing special." In that case, I'm surprised then of things like Falling Man from 9/11, where it shook the world watching a man plummet to his death. Boston Marathon in 1967, Catherine Switzer shocked the world because she actually tried to dare run a marathon as a woman. Or any of the ones from the Vietnam War, which again shook the world as photographs. The shocking execution, the terror of war, the Buddhist monks self-immolating. So to say that photographs can't be impressive, can't be moving, can't be of the time, can't demonstrate the style of the time, I find slightly bewildering in my head. So I will certainly be supporting a photographic portrait, and I don't see why we need to spend potentially gross amounts of money on a painted portrait. The scholarship, on the other hand, not a fan, not in favour of that one too much. I can't see how it would be anything other than weighty and onerous, so I'm struggling to be able to support that one. But I also would like to extend my thanks to Councillor Weatherall for the concept of putting more names to the one link. That makes a lot of sense and makes it a lot more cost friendly.
I don't have anyone else written down. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Mayhem.
I'd just like to say that I like the photograph of Suki Turner, and I feel it should be up to the mayor of the day to select in the way that they would like to be portrayed. If you were an elderly person, you might not want a photo of you, wrinkles and all. Perhaps you'd like some artistic license in the way that you are immortalised through the time. So I think this is something that we probably have to refresh again as time goes on, and really none of us in the room are mayors, so is it our decision? I mean, we're making a decision as a council. I love the tradition. I love that the names go on the links. I love that the names go on the honours board. But I think the portrait part is intensely personal. And I think perhaps if a mayor wanted to fund their own painting, then they could, if a photo was not adequate. It's just my thoughts.
Anybody else? Councillor Lafise.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chair. I'd just like to record my thanks to CEO Graham and her staff for guiding us in this way. I'm reminded of this morning's discussion in terms of the tone that Ms Mash was wanting us to think about. So I guess for me, when I think about this morning's discussion, I talk about concerned, warm, open, but constrained, and that's why I personally believe that a photographic portrait in terms of cost is more suitable, and it could be an amazing photo shoot to reflect the mayor's personality. It doesn't have to be an official like stayed portrait. It could be a magazine cover. I don't know, but for me, that goes in hand with the scholarship notion, because I'm thinking if we're thinking it forward, we're maintaining tradition, but then we're also looking. For me, that scholarship would be targeted towards our young people. And it could be so exciting in terms of civics, education, and a partnership between the mayor and prospective scholarship winners. Kia ora.
Councillor Witherell.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm happy with B, C, D and E, quite honestly. I'm not going to delve into that too much. In regards to A, I think these are transitional times, and I totally agree with Councillor Mayhem that I feel uncomfortable making a decision, taking it out of the previous mayor's hands of how they'd like themselves portrayed in our council chamber. I'd be more than happy to have it that it would be up to those, being a transitional time, up to those previous mayors to choose whether they would feel, how they feel comfortable having themselves portrayed on the wall. So if that motion is not changed, I will be voting for the photographic option, but I would be more comfortable if it was down to the outgoing mayor's choice. Thank you.
Councillor Wiley. Everyone coming in at the last minute.
I might as well make it a clean sweep. The thing that gets me about all this is actually, it's not about us as councillors, it's about the mayor. And it's about celebrating the mayor's service to the city. And they were the ones that stood and were elected to be mayor, and they served their times. Whether you agreed with them or disagreed with them or whatever, they basically did the duty, and we do have to find a way for everyone to have an opportunity to be able to celebrate the mayor and what they achieved. And I think that's the important part here for me, is I'm actually going to support all of it, because I actually think it's a good pathway forward. I think we do have to move with the times, and a photographic portrait is the way to do that. But I think let's acknowledge that this is a way about celebrating all our mayors and basically everything they've achieved. And it's not just for today, it's recognising the past, and also, you know, in 30 years' time they could be having the same debate and they could be looking back on what other mayors have done and how it was recorded. So I think that's the important part.
Okay, I think that's pretty much everybody. Okay, so write a reply. I'll do it, Councillor Walker, and be brief. In the main, I agree with pretty much most things that people have said. I think B, C, D, and E is relatively in agreement. A is the tricky one, and of course that's the the thing about tradition versus, shall we say, moving forward. I certainly take the points that people made and around the art factor with a painted portrait, but I've seen photographs. In fact, you do them on your phone. You can turn a photo on your phone into something that looks like a painted portrait, and perhaps that sort of license could be used in this manner if that was a chosen thing. I suppose the other thing I just bears in mind here, some people have talked about leaving the decision up to the former mayor as to whether they have a painted portrait or a photograph. If we vote down A, they don't get a choice. They will have to have a painted portrait. So keep that in mind, I think, when we go through this. I'm going to put the whole lot. I'm going to put the whole lot by one at a time, and I'm going to do them all by division. So here we go.
Councillor Barker. Aye.
Yes,
so
so this is A.
A.
So this is that the committee approves commissioning of a photographic portrait to recognise the service of former mayors, beginning with former Mayor Hawkins.
Councillor Barker.
Aye.
Councillor Gary.
No.
Councillor Gilbert.
Aye.
Councillor Houlihan.
No.
Councillor Fiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Mayhem.
No.
Councillor O'Malley.
No.
Councillor Vandervis.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
Councillor Witherall.
Aye.
Councillor Wiley.
Yes.
Mr Chair.
Yes.
That's 8 for, 5 against.
Okay, so that's carried. B, that the committee confirms the service of former mayors will continue to be recognised by the engraving of a link in the mayoral chain.
Councillor Barker.
Aye.
Councillor Gary.
Aye.
Councillor Gilbert.
Aye.
Councillor Houlihan.
Aye.
Councillor Fiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Mayhem.
Aye.
Councillor O'Malley.
Aye.
Councillor Vandervis.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
Councillor Witherall.
Aye.
Councillor Wiley.
Yes.
Mr Chair.
Yes.
That's 12 in favour, 1 against.
Move on to C, that the committee authorises the cost of future new links to be funded from council budgets, beginning with former Mayor Hawkins.
Councillor Barker.
Aye.
Councillor Gary.
Aye.
Councillor Gilbert.
Aye.
Councillor Houlihan.
Aye.
Councillor Fiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Mayhem.
Aye.
Councillor O'Malley.
Aye.
Councillor Vandervis.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
Councillor Witherall.
Aye.
Councillor Wiley.
Yes.
Mr Chair.
Yes.
That's 12 in favour, 1 against.
D, that the committee asks staff to investigate options and costs for a possible mayoral scholarship and provide a report to a future committee meeting.
Councillor Barker.
Aye.
Councillor Gary.
Aye.
Councillor Gilbert.
No.
Councillor Houlihan.
No.
Councillor Fiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
No.
Councillor Mayhem.
Aye.
Councillor O'Malley.
Aye.
Councillor Vandervis.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
Councillor Witherall.
Aye.
Councillor Wiley.
Yes.
Mr Chair.
Yes.
9 in favour, 4 against.
And finally, E, that the committee notes that the Honours Board will be updated with a single entry for each mayor that includes their entire length of service.
Councillor Barker.
Aye.
Councillor Gary.
Aye.
Councillor Gilbert.
Aye.
Councillor Houlihan. Councillor Fiso.
Aye.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Mayhem.
Aye.
Councillor O'Malley.
Aye.
Councillor Vandervis.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
Councillor Witherall.
Aye.
Councillor Wiley.
Yes.
Mr Chair.
Yes.
That's 13 in favour, none against.
Oh, I see you waiting. Thank you, everybody. I actually do believe there was a degree of teamwork in amongst all of that, and I think there were some great comments from both sides in terms of the photo versus the portrait. So we move on. Review is still to happen. Councillor Houlihan.
Well, that might have answered my question. My question is, why are we even getting this paper? I don't understand why it's even here.
Because it's been asked for it.
This committee?
Yeah. Because there are a multitude of outside organisations that councillors are appointed to, and councillors have been keen to understand their role, why they're appointed, and what their obligations are. And so as part of that work, we've found an old policy statement, and we are saying in this report that we think as a basis for the work, we should review that, because it's clearly, there was which we were unaware of, an existing policy.
So
now it probably needs to be reviewed.
So this is outlining the way forward.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Gary.
So, Chief, is it correct that some of the appointments, the reason for some of the appointments has changed over time?
Part of the thing we still have to do is have proper discussions with various of the organisations, because Claire has been doing a great job getting all of and thank you for your help, the foundation documents for some of them, the trust deed or the constitution. Some of them reference councillors, some don't, some say why, some don't. Some of them clearly had a funding requirement back in the day when they were set up, some may not anymore. So that's what we're starting to do, because this policy document, that is a policy position of council, we believe, has 3 requirements for how those appointments were made historically. But given the grants review that we have underway and various other work, it's timely to review what and how you might interact with some of those groups in the future.
Councillor Vandervis.
In the event that a particular appointment doesn't have any councillor volunteering for the position, under the existing policy document, does the Mayor have the authority to simply appoint somebody to a role?
Well, the Mayor's not mentioned in the existing policy document, but that I can see. But this document is old. We weren't aware of it. Neither Claire or I were aware of it until we started Claire started doing the work on this. So I suspect that no Mayor's ever been aware of it either.
So to put the question a different way, does the existing policy document deal with the issue that there may be some appointments that no elected representative volunteers to fill the appointment for?
Well, no, it doesn't, but sometimes some roles do require a council appointment.
Any further questions? If not, I will move that the committee notes the review of appointments to outside organisations update report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wiley. Any discussion? Councillor Gary.
Look, I'm really pleased to see this bit of work being done. I had an experience where I was appointed to an organisation, and often the organisation will think that it provides them with a voice at the council table, but of course it provides a conflict of interest. And as they delved into the why there was a councillor appointed, they discovered that in fact it had come from a former time when a staff member, in fact the constitution said a staff member would be appointed to their particular organisation, and that had been superseded by our Aratoi establishment of our Aratoi team. So it was a moot point really, and so I would suggest that there's a number of organisations where the reason for an appointment over time has changed and not necessarily necessary any further. And also we're much more aware of conflicts of interest. So for that organisation to not now have a councillor appointed means that all councillors can speak around any debate that involves that organisation. So I think, there's been changes in how we perceive things, changes in why people are appointed to organisations, and I think checking that, and of course there's different, some are in constitutions, some are, all the organisations have different documents, some of them are board appointments and quite formal and under an Act of Parliament, as per the museum, and so I think it's time we reviewed that to best use the skills of councillors and to best serve the organisations that we are appointed to.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I think it's a timely review. And in particular, it says quite clearly in the 1990 policy, the role, functions and expectations for the appointee have been clearly defined. And so that's a fair way away from some of the situations we find ourselves now. And so having a clearly established reason as well as role, function and expectation is a good enough reason to have a clear review and set the ground rules going forward.
Councillor O'Malley.
Yeah, I'm going to basically agree with the previous two speakers. I think if you look at 1990, that's before the Local Government Act, current Local Government Act was in place, and our relationship between decision making and where it was in the 90s is completely different. A lot of these organisations did need councillors on in their day to have their, as Councillor Gary pointed out, their position advocated for. The structure's completely changed now. What I would be hoping that might also come through with this body of work would be when councils would, like the statutory ones that are going to have councillors still on them, we've got this issue of what does the councillor then carry with them when they go to those committees or places, and then what do we know what they said when they got there. So hopefully some of that will be addressed too in this review, which would be quite nice. Thank you.
If there's no further speakers, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 10, items for consideration by the Chair. We don't have any. So on that note, I will conclude the meeting closed at 4:28. Thank you very much.